The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. The Federation has cataloged thousands of species, mapped countless star systems, and developed technologies that would seem like magic to our ancestors. But what happens when something defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? What happens when a god arrives, not born from mythology, but manufactured in a laboratory, and discovers that in a universe built on reason and dignity, worship is no longer currency? Captain Jean-Luc Picard stood on the bridge of the USS Enterprise D, his attention focused on the view screen displaying a routine survey of the Calendra sector. It was supposed to be a standard mapping mission, the kind of scientific exploration that represented Starfleet's highest ideals. The kind of mission where the most exciting event might be discovering a new class of protostar. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Data announced from the operations console, his golden eyes reflecting the sudden cascade of warnings across his screen. I am detecting a massive subspace distortion forming directly ahead. The energy signature does not match any known phenomenon in our database. On screen, Picard commanded, rising from his chair. The view screen shimmered, revealing a tear in space itself. Not the elegant spiral of a wormhole or the predictable geometry of a spatial anomaly, but something violent and wrong. Reality was being ripped open, bleeding colors that shouldn't exist into normal space. Shields up, Picard ordered. Mr. Data, analysis? The distortion is expanding exponentially, Captain. It appears to be a dimensional rift, but the quantum variance is data paused, which for an android meant the readings were truly extraordinary. Impossible. The energy flowing through the aperture suggests a connection to a parallel universe with fundamentally different physical laws. Captain, we're being pulled in. Lieutenant Worf's voice carried the Klingon's characteristic controlled urgency from tactical. The rift is generating a gravitational field that's overwhelming our warp engines. Full reverse, Picard commanded. Geordi, can we break free? From engineering, Commander LaForge's voice crackled through the comm. I'm trying, Captain, but this thing's got us. It's like it's specifically targeting our warp signature. I've never seen anything like. The Enterprise shuddered violently. Picard gripped his armrest as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate. On the view screen, the rift had swallowed half their field of view, a churning maelstrom of impossible energies. Transporter Room 1 to bridge. Chief O'Brien's voice was strained. Captain, something's materializing in our pattern buffer. I didn't initiate transport, but the system is actively pulling something through from. I don't even know where. The biosignatures are reading as human, but the energy levels are off the scale. Abort the transport, Picard ordered immediately. I'm trying, sir, but the rift is using our own transporter systems as an anchor point. If I shut it down now, whatever's coming through will be scattered across subspace. I have to complete the cycle. Picard exchanged a glance with Commander William Riker, his first officer. They both understood the implications. Something, or someone, was using the Enterprise as a doorway between universes. Complete the transport, Chief, Picard decided. But security team to Transporter Room 1 immediately. Worf, you have the bridge. Aye, Captain. Worf's hand moved to the phaser at his hip even as he assumed the command chair. Picard and Riker moved swiftly to the turbolift. The ship continued to shudder as the rift's gravitational effects intensified. By the time they reached Transporter Room 1, a security team had already taken positions around the platform, phasers drawn but pointed safely downward. Chief O'Brien stood at the controls, sweat beading on his forehead as he fought to stabilize the pattern buffer. Whatever this is, it's fighting the confinement beam. The molecular structure keeps trying to reconstitute itself faster than our systems can process. Life signs? Riker asked. Human, or close enough. But Captain. O'Brien's voice dropped. The cellular density readings suggest this person could crush uranium with their bare hands. I'm seeing energy emissions that rival a small fusion reactor. Energize, Picard ordered, his voice calm despite the unknown they were about to face. The transporter beam engaged with a sound wrong in its harmonics, as if the machine itself was uncertain about what it was creating. Light coalesced on the platform. Brilliant. almost too bright to look at directly. When it faded, a man stood where emptiness had been moments before. He was tall, blond, devastatingly handsome in a way that seemed almost artificial. He wore a costume of red, white, and blue, garish by Federation standards, emblazoned with an eagle across the chest. A cape, actual fabric cape, hung from his shoulders. His eyes swept the room with the predatory awareness of someone accustomed to being the most dangerous thing in any space he occupied. For a long moment, nobody moved. The man's gaze fixed on the phasers, then on Picard, then traveled across the transporter room as if cataloging every detail, every potential threat, every exit. Where? His voice was strong, controlled, but Picard detected an undertone of something else. Confusion? Fear? Where am I? You are aboard the USS Enterprise, Picard said, stepping forward with his hands visible and open. I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federation of Planets. You've come through some kind of dimensional anomaly. We mean you no harm, but I must ask, who are you? The man's expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to fully track. Confusion gave way to suspicion, then to something that looked almost like relief before settling into a carefully constructed smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm Homelander, he said, as if the name should mean something, as if it should inspire awe. I'm the Homelander, the greatest hero in the world. When no recognition flickered across any face in the room, something in his expression tightened. You've never heard of me, he said slowly, the smile becoming strained. I'm afraid not, Picard replied. But we would very much like to understand what's happened and how we might help you return to your point of origin. If you'll come with us to sickbay, our doctor can ensure the transport didn't cause any. Homelander moved faster than should have been possible. One moment he was on the platform. The next he was hovering 3 feet above the deck, his cape settling around him as if obeying different physical laws than everything else in the room. He was flying. Without propulsion, without anti-grav technology, without anything except apparent will, he was defying gravity itself. Every phaser in the room snapped upward. Stand down, Picard commanded immediately. To Homelander, his voice remained calm. That won't be necessary. We're not your enemies. Homelander's eyes, Picard could have sworn they glowed faintly red for just an instant, swept across the security team. Then tell them to lower their weapons. It wasn't a request. The tone carried the weight of someone accustomed to absolute obedience, to commands that were followed because the alternative was unthinkable. Picard made a decision in that moment, one based on decades of first contact experience. He gestured, and the security team lowered their phasers, but didn't holster them. We are not your enemies, Picard repeated, but neither are we your subordinates. You are a guest aboard this vessel, and guests do not issue commands to Starfleet personnel. However, I extend an invitation. Join me in my ready room. We can discuss your situation like civilized beings. Homelander lowered slowly to the deck, his boots touching the floor with perfect, controlled grace. That artificial smile returned. Civilized, he repeated, as if tasting the word. Sure, let's be civilized, Captain. But as he passed by Picard, close enough that the captain could smell something chemical and wrong beneath expensive cologne, Homelander leaned in slightly. His voice dropped to a whisper only Picard could hear. But let's be clear about something. I don't do guests. Wherever I am, whatever this place is, I'm the one in charge. It's just a matter of time before everyone realizes it. And then he was past, striding toward the corridor as if he'd been aboard the Enterprise his entire life, as if he owned it. Picard exchanged a glance with Riker. His first officer's expression mirrored his own concern. They had just welcomed something dangerous aboard their ship, something powerful, unstable, and utterly convinced of its own supremacy. And the dimensional rift that brought him here was still growing, still pulling at the Enterprise with inexorable force. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The ready room felt smaller with Homelander in it. Not because of his physical presence. He'd settled into the chair across from Picard's desk with casual arrogance, one leg crossed over the other, but because of the way he occupied space itself, like gravity bent slightly in his direction, like the room had to accommodate him rather than the other way around. Picard had faced down Borg cubes, negotiated with Romulan commanders, and stared into the infinite smugness of Q himself. But this was different. This was a man-shaped weapon wearing a smile like a uniform, and beneath that smile lurked something profoundly damaged. "Computer, Earl Grey tea, hot," Picard ordered, then glanced at his guest. "Would you care for anything?" Homelander's eyes, blue, unsettlingly perfect, swept across the replicator alcove with undisguised fascination quickly masked by indifference. "What is that? Some kind of food printer?" "A replicator. It can create most foods and beverages by reorganizing matter at the molecular level." "Right. Sure." Homelander waved dismissively. "I'll have milk. Whole milk. Cold." The specificity of the request struck Picard as odd, but he complied. When the glass materialized, Homelander took it with hands that could probably crush the container to powder, but held it with perfect, practiced delicacy. He drank deeply, and for just a moment, something in his expression softened, became almost vulnerable. Then the mask snapped back into place. "So, Captain," Homelander set the glass down with exaggerated care. "Dimensional anomaly. That's your best explanation for why I'm here instead of—" He paused, and Picard saw him process something painful. "Instead of where I should be. Our preliminary analysis suggests you've crossed from a parallel universe," Picard explained, settling into his chair. "The energy signature accompanying your arrival doesn't match anything in Federation databases. Mr. Data, one of my officers, believes the quantum variance between our universes is substantial enough that the physical laws governing your reality may differ significantly from ours." "Physical laws?" Homelander laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Captain, I can fly faster than your fancy ship probably travels. I can hear conversations happening 3 decks away right now. Do you know your chief engineer is worried about warp core stability? I can see through walls, melt steel with my eyes, and I've never been hurt by anything in my entire life. Physical laws don't apply to me." It was said with absolute conviction. Not boasting, stating fact. The way one might observe that water is wet. "Fascinating," Picard replied, his tone genuinely intrigued rather than intimidated. "Although I must correct one assumption. The Enterprise can achieve speeds far exceeding light itself through warp drive technology. But your other abilities are indeed remarkable. May I ask, are you the result of genetic engineering, an evolutionary adaptation, or perhaps something else?" The question hit something tender. Picard saw it in the micro-expression that flickered across Homelander's face before control reasserted itself. "I was created," Homelander said flatly. "Made in a lab. Injected with Compound V when I was barely born. Turned into—" He gestured at himself, the movement somehow both proud and bitter. "This. The perfect weapon wrapped in a perfect smile. America's greatest hero." "America," Picard repeated. "A nation-state on Earth, I presume?" "Wait." Homelander leaned forward, and Picard noted how his eyes narrowed with dangerous focus. "You have Earth here? Humans. The Federation is an alliance of over 150 member worlds. Earth, humanity's homeworld, is one of the founding members. We've evolved beyond nation-states, beyond the conflicts and tribalism that characterized our earlier history. The Federation represents our highest ideals: peaceful exploration, scientific advancement, and the inherent dignity of all sentient beings." Homelander stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, genuinely laughed, and it was the most unsettling sound Picard had heard in years. "You're serious? You actually believe that utopian bullshit?" Homelander stood, began pacing the ready room like a caged predator. "Let me guess. Everyone gets along, nobody's hungry, war is obsolete, and we all hold hands and sing songs about peace. We've worked very hard to build that society," Picard said evenly. "It wasn't given to us. It was earned through centuries of struggle, sacrifice, and the conscious choice to be better than our worst impulses. And let me guess, you don't have heroes anymore. Because everyone's equal, right? Nobody stands above the crowd. We have individuals who distinguish themselves through service, courage, and innovation. But we don't worship them. Hero worship is a relic of humanity's adolescence, a projection of our own potential onto convenient figureheads rather than recognizing the capacity for greatness within ourselves." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Homelander stopped pacing, turned slowly to face Picard. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet, very controlled. So what am I in your perfect little universe, Captain? Just another lab experiment? Another interesting specimen to study. You are a sentient being who has suffered a traumatic displacement from your reality. Picard replied, meeting those unsettling eyes without flinching. My duty is to ensure your well-being and, if possible, facilitate your return home. That is what Starfleet does. The door chimed. Picard recognized the timing. He'd asked Commander Data to interrupt after precisely 15 minutes. Come. Data entered, his posture perfect, his golden eyes taking in Homelander with the clinical precision of an android analyzing an unknown variable. Behind him, Counselor Troi stepped through, and Picard watched her reaction carefully. As a half-betazoid empath, Troi could sense emotions with extraordinary clarity. Her face paled slightly. Her hand moved unconsciously to her chest, as if something had physically struck her. Captain, Data reported, the dimensional rift has stabilized at a diameter of 2.3 kilometers. We have successfully withdrawn to a safe distance. However, the rift is generating subspace distortions that will make warp travel impossible within this sector until it collapses or we find a way to seal it. Recommendations? I suggest we deploy a series of quantum probes to analyze the rift's internal structure. If we can determine the specific quantum signature of, Data paused, his gaze shifting to Homelander. Forgive me. I should introduce myself. I am Lieutenant Commander Data, Second Officer and Operations Manager. And you are? Homelander. He said it differently this time. Testing, watching for recognition that didn't come. The Homelander. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. Data extended his hand with mechanical courtesy. Homelander looked at the hand, then at Data's face, his eyes narrowing. What are you? You're not human. I am an android. A sentient artificial intelligence housed in a positronic matrix and biosynthetic body. I was created by Dr. Noonien Sung and activated on February 2nd, 2338. An android. Homelander's smile returned, but it had edges now. A machine that thinks it's people. That's cute. Real cute. I do not think I am people. Data corrected with no trace of offense. I am aware that I am an artificial being. However, Starfleet and the Federation have recognized my sentience and granted me full rights and citizenship. I serve aboard the Enterprise as an officer, not as property or equipment. Picard watched the exchange carefully. Homelander was studying Data with the intensity of a predator identifying potential prey or potential threat. Counselor Troi, Picard said, drawing attention to the woman who had remained near the door, her empathic senses clearly overwhelmed. This is Homelander. He's come through the dimensional anomaly. I thought perhaps you might. I can feel him from here. Troi interrupted, her voice strained in a way Picard had rarely heard. Captain, I need to speak with you. Privately. Homelander's head tilted slightly, like a hawk focusing on movement in grass. Oh, I get it. You're one of those psychic types. You can feel emotions, read people's feelings. I'm an empath, yes. Troy's professional mask was firmly in place, but Picard could see the effort it took. I sense emotions, not thoughts. And what do you sense from me, Counselor? Homelander took a step toward her, and Picard rose from his chair reflexively. Do I scare you? Am I giving off bad vibes? You're in pain, Troi said quietly, and it clearly wasn't what Homelander expected. Profound pain. Rage. Loneliness. And beneath all of that, terror. You're terrified. For one crystalline moment, the mask shattered completely. Homelander's face twisted with naked fury and something worse. The expression of someone whose deepest wound had just been exposed to daylight. His eyes flared red, actual red, glowing with building energy. How dare you? Homelander. Picard's voice cut through the tension like a phaser through hull plating. Stand down. Now. The red faded slowly. Homelander's hands, which had clenched into fists, gradually relaxed. But when he looked at Picard, the hatred was undisguised. I think I'm done with your hospitality, Captain. I'll find my own way off this ship. The ship is currently maintaining position near a dimensional rift that may be your only way home, Picard said calmly. And you're several 100,000 kilometers from the nearest habitable planet. I understand you're disoriented and upset, but leaving now would be inadvisable. Inadvisable, Homelander repeated. You know what I find inadvisable? Being psychoanalyzed by someone I just met. Having my mind read without permission. Being treated like a lab rat who needs to be contained. Nobody is containing you, Picard said. But if you wish to remain aboard this vessel, you will conduct yourself with the same courtesy and respect we extend to you. If that's unacceptable, I can arrange for quarters on a nearby starbase where I'll stay. The words came quickly, almost desperately. Homelander forced another smile. Sorry, it's been a rough day. Dimensional travel takes it out of you, you know. It was a lie, and everyone in the room knew it. But it was also an attempt at de-escalation, however clumsy. Understandable, Picard allowed. Mr. Data, please escort our guest to VIP quarters on Deck 9. Ensure he has access to replicator services and entertainment systems. Homelander, I suggest you rest. We'll continue our discussion once you've had time to adjust. Sure thing, Captain. Homelander headed for the door, Data following with android precision. At the threshold, he paused. Just one question, this Federation of yours. Do you have cameras? News. Broadcasting. We have communication networks and news services, yes. Something calculating flickered across Homelander's face. Good. That's good. Then he was gone, leaving Picard and Troi alone in the ready room's suddenly breathable atmosphere. Troi sagged against the wall, her professional composure crumbling. My God, Captain. What is he? A weapon, I think. One that was never taught to be anything else. Picard moved to her side. Are you all right? I've sensed rage before. Anger, hatred, violence, serving on the Enterprise, it's unavoidable. But this? She shook her head. There's something broken in him at a fundamental level. He needs love, needs it desperately, but he doesn't understand what it actually is. All he knows is worship, adoration, fear. And underneath everything else, Captain, he's absolutely certain that if people truly knew him, they would despise him. And does he give them reason to? Troi met his eyes. I think in his universe, he gives them every reason. And I think that terrifies him more than anything we could do. Picard moved to the window, gazing out at the swirling dimensional rift that had deposited this damaged, dangerous man into their universe. Computer, send a message to Starfleet Command, Priority 2. Inform them we've made contact with a being from a parallel universe. Request guidance on first contact protocols and psychological support resources. They would need both. Dr. Beverly Crusher had seen many things during her years as Chief Medical Officer of the Enterprise. She'd treated Klingon after ritual combat, performed emergency surgery during warp core breaches, and once extracted a parasitic alien from Captain Picard's brain. But she'd never seen cellular readings quite like this. Computer, run the scan again, she said, studying the biobed display with the intense focus she reserved for genuine medical mysteries. Full spectral analysis, molecular resolution. The medical tricorder had provided preliminary data when Homelander grudgingly agreed to a basic examination. What it showed defied every principle of human biology she understood. His skeletal structure incorporated elements that shouldn't exist in carbon-based life. And there was energy, vast reserves of it, contained within every cell, held in check by mechanisms she couldn't even begin to understand. Dr. Crusher? She turned to find Homelander standing in sickbay's entrance, looking profoundly uncomfortable. He'd changed out of his costume into standard civilian attire, gray slacks, and a simple shirt, though he'd clearly replicated them in his quarters. The effect was jarring. Without the cape and garish colors, he looked almost normal, young, vulnerable, until you saw his eyes. Thank you for coming, Beverly said, maintaining her professional warmth despite Counselor Troi's warning about his psychological state. I know medical examinations aren't pleasant, but given the dimensional transfer and the unusual readings from the transporter, I'd like to run a few more comprehensive scans. I don't do medical examinations, Homelander said flatly. I've had enough of doctors poking and prodding me to last several lifetimes. I understand, but you've just traveled between universes. There could be effects we're not aware of, cellular damage, quantum variance impacts, even psychological trauma from the displacement. I'm fine. He said it with absolute finality. I heal from everything. I've been shot, stabbed, thrown off buildings, caught in explosions that vaporized everything around me. Nothing leaves a mark. Beverly studied him carefully. It must be lonely. The non sequitur caught him off guard. What? Never being vulnerable. Never needing help. Never being able to let anyone close enough to care for you without fearing you might hurt them. She set down her tricorder, her expression shifting from doctor to something more human. It must be profoundly isolating. For a heartbeat, something genuine flickered across his face. Then the walls slammed back up. I have millions of people who love me, he said. Or I did. Back home. I'm America's greatest hero. Kids want to be me. Adults worship me. I'm on billboards, in movies, everywhere. I'm not lonely. I'm adored. That's not the same thing, Beverly said gently. It's close enough. The intercom chirped. Bridge to Dr. Crusher. Beverly tapped her comm badge. Crusher here. Doctor, we're receiving a distress call from the colony on Theta Cygni 7. They've had a catastrophic failure in their atmospheric processors. Without immediate repair, the entire colony will suffocate within 6 hours. Picard's voice carried its characteristic calm urgency. We're the nearest vessel, but I'll need you to prepare sickbay for potential casualties. Understood, Captain. Beverly's mind already raced through triage protocols and supply requirements. One more thing, Picard added. The colony is experiencing severe plasma storms that will make transporter use unreliable. We'll need to send a shuttlecraft with repair equipment. Mr. LaForge is assembling a team now. Homelander had listened to the entire exchange, his expression shifting from defensive to something predatory. The look of someone who'd just found an opportunity. I can help, he said. Beverly turned to him. I'm sorry, your colony. 6 hours until everyone dies, right? I can fly there in minutes, fix whatever's broken, and be back before your shuttle even launches. His smile was building now, energized. That's what I do. I save people. That's generous, Beverly said carefully. But you're not familiar with our technology. The atmospheric processors are complex Federation systems that. Then send someone with me. I'll fly them there. They can fix the equipment, problem solved. You said 6 hours. I'm offering you a solution in 1. The logic was sound. The offer seemed genuine. And yet something in Beverly's medical instincts screamed warning. I'll need to clear it with the captain, she said. Of course. Homelander's smile widened. Go ahead. Tell him America's greatest hero is ready to serve. 20 minutes later, the situation room adjacent to the bridge had become an impromptu war room. Picard sat at the head of the table, with Riker, Data, Troi, LaForge, and Worf arrayed around him. At the far end, looking simultaneously eager and bored, Homelander occupied a chair like it was a throne. The atmospheric processors are Federation standard models, Geordi explained, his visor allowing him to read the technical specifications directly from his PADD. 3 redundant units maintain the oxygen-nitrogen balance for 12,000 colonists. 2 units failed simultaneously. That shouldn't be possible unless there's a design flaw or sabotage. The remaining unit is operating at 140% capacity and will burn out completely within 6 hours. Can you repair them remotely? Picard asked. No, sir. The damage is physical, melted conduits, fused power couplings. Someone needs to be on-site with replacement components. Geordi glanced at Homelander, which normally takes 3 hours by shuttle. But if our guest can actually fly at the speeds he claims. I can't, Homelander interjected. Easily. Point me in the right direction. Give me someone who knows what they're doing. And I'll have those people breathing easy before you finish your next cup of tea, Captain. Worf's voice rumbled from his position near the door. Captain, I must object. We know nothing about this individual's true capabilities or intentions. Sending him to a civilian colony with one of our officers is an unacceptable security risk. Noted, Lieutenant. Picard's fingers steepled before him. However, we're faced with a tactical reality. 12,000 lives hang in the balance, and conventional response times may be insufficient. Homelander, you've volunteered your assistance. What? The direct question seemed to catch him off guard. Because it's what I do, he said, then caught himself. Did back home. I'm a hero. I save people. It's literally my job. For compensation? Data asked with genuine curiosity. What? No. I mean, Vought paid me, obviously, but... Homelander stopped, realizing how that sounded. Look, people needed saving, I saved them. That's how it works. And here's a chance to save 12,000 people. Isn't that what you Federation types are all about? Saving lives. Counselor Troi had been silent throughout the discussion, her dark eyes focused on Homelander with uncomfortable intensity. Now she spoke, her voice careful. Captain, I sense genuine desire to help. But there's something else. A need for validation, for proving his worth. He sees this as an opportunity to establish himself as valuable to us. Of course I do. Homelander's frustration broke through. I'm stuck in a universe where nobody knows who I am, being treated like a potential threat instead of the most powerful being on this ship. Forgive me for wanting to prove I'm not your enemy. Nobody has accused you of being our enemy, Picard said. Haven't you? The weapons, the suspicious looks, the psychological evaluation disguised as medical care. I know what containment protocols look like, Captain. I've lived in a lab. I know when I'm being studied rather than trusted. The raw honesty of it hung in the air. Picard exchanged glances with his senior officers, reading their concerns, weighing them against the lives at stake. Very well, Picard decided. Mr. LaForge, you'll accompany Homelander to Theta Cygni 7. Homelander will provide transportation, you will perform the repairs. Lieutenant Worf, you'll go as well, not as security, but as additional technical support. Worf's expression made clear what he thought of that explanation, but he nodded. Aye, sir. One condition. Picard continued, his gaze fixed on Homelander. You will follow Mr. LaForge's instructions precisely. You will not interact with colonists beyond what's necessary for the mission. And you will return to the Enterprise immediately upon completion. Is that acceptable? Perfectly. Homelander stood, and there was genuine enthusiasm in his bearing now. You won't regret this, Captain. I'm going to show you exactly what I can do. That was precisely what worried Picard. The shuttle bay had been cleared for departure preparations. Worf loomed nearby, his discomfort with the entire situation radiating from him like heat from a warp core. Homelander descended from the observation deck, his civilian clothes replaced by his original costume. The cape billowed behind him despite the absence of wind, and he moved with the coiled energy of someone finally allowed to do what he was built for. So how does this work? Geordi asked, genuine engineering curiosity overriding his apprehension. You just pick us up and fly? How do you generate thrust? Is it some kind of localized gravitational manipulation, or? I have no idea, Homelander admitted. I just fly. It's like asking how you move your arm. You just do it. Fascinating. The biological integration of what appears to be a repulsor field or possibly a controlled manipulation of. Geordi, Worf interrupted. Perhaps we should focus on the mission parameters. Right? Sorry. Okay, so Theta Cygni 7 is approximately 400 million kilometers from our current position. The colony's main settlement is on the southern continent, coordinates already loaded into your. Well, we don't have navigation equipment for you, do we? I can track the Enterprise's warp signature, Homelander said. I'll fly there. You fix the problem, we fly back. Simple. Nothing's simple, Worf muttered. Homelander's eyes narrowed. You really don't trust me, do you? I do not know you, Worf corrected. Trust must be earned through honorable conduct over time. You have been aboard this vessel for less than 6 hours. And in that time, have I done anything to make you think I'm going to hurt you? You threatened Counselor Troi. I didn't threaten her. She invaded my privacy, poked around in my head without permission. Where I come from, that's a violation. But I didn't hurt her, did I? I controlled myself. Despite being insulted, analyzed, and treated like a lab specimen, I've been perfectly reasonable. It was true, Geordi realized. Homelander had every reason to be angry, to feel defensive, and yet he'd held himself in check. Maybe Picard was right to give him this chance. Okay, Geordi said, stepping between them before the tension could escalate. Let's do this. Homelander, if you could grab these equipment containers? They're magnetically sealed, so they should stay together during flight. Worf and I can. Homelander simply reached out and lifted both containers, easily 400 kilograms combined, with one hand. Where do you want them? Just hold them, I guess. What about us? Worf asked suspiciously. I can carry you both, one under each arm. It'll be a little undignified, but we'll make good time. Homelander's smile had returned, but there was something almost boyish about it now. Excitement. Purpose. Fair warning. It gets cold outside the ship, and we'll be moving fast. But I'll keep us in a protective envelope. My flight generates a kind of localized field that, actually, I have no idea how it works either. But you'll be able to breathe. Geordi looked at Worf. Worf looked deeply unhappy. For the record, the Klingon said, "This is not an honorable way to travel." Noted, Geordi replied. "Okay, Homelander, let's save some lives." The shuttle bay doors opened to reveal the star-scattered void beyond. Homelander stepped to the edge, the vacuum not affecting him in the slightest, and held out his arms. "Ready when you are, gentlemen." Geordi had participated in countless away missions, faced down Borg drones and Romulan warbirds, survived transporter malfunctions and spatial anomalies. But being carried through space tucked under the arm of a flying man wearing a cape might be the strangest experience of his career. Homelander's grip was firm but careful as he positioned Geordi under one arm and Worf under the other, the equipment containers held effortlessly in his left hand. "Hold on," Homelander said, and there was genuine joy in his voice now. "This is the fun part." Then they were moving, accelerating so quickly that Geordi's stomach lurched. But true to Homelander's word, there was air around them, thin, cold, but breathable. And through his visor's unique perception, Geordi could see the energy field surrounding them, a cocoon of impossible physics protecting them from the void. The Enterprise shrank behind them, becoming a point of light among countless others. Ahead, somewhere in the darkness, 12,000 people waited to breathe, and Homelander flew toward them, carrying 2 Starfleet officers and perhaps the weight of his own desperate need to matter. The Enterprise conference room had been converted into an impromptu strategic analysis center. Holographic displays showed stellar cartography, subspace communication logs, and most prominently, news feeds from across Federation space. Picard stood at the head of the table, watching as reports proliferated across the displays like a virus spreading through an ecosystem. In the 72 hours since the Theta Cygni 7 rescue, Homelander had become the most talked-about phenomenon in Federation space. The colony administrator's official report was relatively restrained. Data explained, manipulating the holographic interface to highlight specific communications. However, personal messages from colonists have spread through civilian channels with exponential growth. Current estimates suggest over 4 billion Federation citizens have now heard about Homelander's existence. 4 billion, Riker repeated, shaking his head. In 3 days. The narrative has evolved beyond simple factual reporting, Data continued. Analysis of communication patterns suggests significant embellishment. Some accounts describe Homelander as capable of destroying starships with his heat vision. Others claim he can hear thoughts from parsecs away. The mythology is growing faster than the truth. Picard turned to Counselor Troi. "Your assessment?" "The Federation hasn't had a genuine superhero figure in generations," Troi said carefully. "We've evolved past the need for such symbols, or thought we had. But Homelander represents something primal. Individual power unbound by technology or collective effort. People are fascinated because he violates everything they understand about how the universe works." "He's also receiving communication requests," Worf added, his tone making clear his opinion of this development. 17 planetary governments have extended formal invitations for him to visit. 43 news organizations want interviews. And, he paused, consulting his PADED with visible distaste. 3 separate groups have requested permission to establish religions worshipping him. "Religions," Picard said flatly. "The Church of the Ascended Savior, the Brotherhood of Eternal Strength, and something called the Homelander Liberation Front, which appears to be less religious and more political in nature." "Has he responded to any of these requests?" "No, sir. He's remained in his quarters for the past 2 days, accessing our database and entertainment archives. He's been..." Worf consulted his logs. Watching himself?" "Watching himself?" Riker asked. "The news footage from Theta Cygni 7. He's played it 47 times. Worf's expression suggested this behavior confirmed his worst suspicions. Picard felt the weight of command settle more heavily on his shoulders. They'd thought they were dealing with a displaced individual in need of assistance. But what they'd actually brought aboard was something far more complex. A damaged man with godlike power and a pathological need for validation. now given access to billions of potential worshippers. Captain, Data interjected, I am detecting a new communication stream. It originates from coordinates deep within the Romulan neutral zone. The holographic display shifted, revealing a sector of space that should have been empty according to all Federation intelligence. But Data's sensors showed something there. A vessel, small and heavily cloaked, broadcasting on encrypted channels. Can you decrypt it? Picard asked. Already completed. The message is unusual. Data played the audio. A woman's voice, speaking Federation standard with a slight Romulan accent, to the being called Homelander, aboard the Federation vessel Enterprise. The Romulan Star Empire acknowledges your existence and power. We offer alliance, resources, and purpose. The Federation will study you, contain you, and eventually fear you. We offer something better, freedom to exercise your true potential. Respond on this frequency if interested. The Tal Shiar is always watching. The message ended. Silence filled the conference room. Damn, Riker breathed. They're trying to recruit him. Logical, from their perspective, Data observed. Homelander represents a significant strategic asset. His individual combat capability appears to exceed anything in Starfleet's arsenal. If the Romulans could convince him to defect, he won't, Troi said, but her voice lacked conviction. Will he? I don't know, Picard admitted. Mr. Worf, has he accessed this message? All incoming communications are routed through me first, per security protocols. He has not seen it. Keep it that way for now. But we need to speak with him. He deserves to know the Romulans are aware of his presence, even if we don't share the specific details of their offer. Captain, Troi said gently, perhaps I should speak with him first. Alone. He's been isolated since the mission, and isolation feeds his worst instincts. He needs human connection, not another command briefing. Picard considered this. Very well, Counselor. But keep your comm badge active. And Worf, monitor from security, discreetly. Troi nodded and left the conference room. As she departed, Picard returned his attention to the holographic displays, watching as more news reports proliferated, as more requests arrived, as the mythology of Homelander grew beyond their capacity to control it. We've unleashed something, he said quietly. Haven't we? Perhaps, Data replied. But the alternative was allowing 12,000 colonists to suffocate. You made the correct choice given available information. The correct choice, Data, is often merely the least terrible option from a menu of disasters. Homelander's quarters were dark when Troi entered, the lighting reduced to barely above ambient starlight. He sat in the chair before the view screen, watching footage from Theta Cygni 7 on repeat. The colony administrator thanking them, the crowd pressing forward, his own face as he addressed the colonists. Computer, pause playback, Troi said gently. The image froze on Homelander's face, caught in mid-smile. Even frozen, his expression radiated that manufactured charm, that desperate performance. Come to analyze me some more, Counselor? His voice came from the darkness, bitter and tired. I came to talk. As one person to another, not as evaluator to subject. Troi moved to the chair opposite him, settling in with deliberate casualness. May I? Free ship. Do what you want. Except it's not, is it? Not really free. You feel trapped here. Studied. Contained. Homelander's laugh was hollow. Your empathic powers at work again. Actually, no. Just observation. You've barely left your quarters in 2 days. You've declined every invitation to tour the ship, join crew meals, or even visit the holodeck. You're isolating yourself. Maybe I like being alone. That's a lie. Troi's voice remained gentle, but firm. You hate being alone. You need people around you, need their attention and approval. Being isolated is torture for you. Then maybe I deserve to be tortured, Homelander said quietly. Did that occur to you? The admission hung in the air between them. Troi felt the wave of self-loathing radiating from him, genuine, profound, and deeply buried beneath layers of narcissism and rage. Why would you deserve that, she asked. Because of what I am, what I've done, what I'd do again if given the chance. His voice was barely above a whisper now. You keep trying to psychoanalyze me, Counselor. Want to know what you'd find if you really dug deep? A monster. A thing that was never meant to be human, just to look like one. Vought's perfect product. America's greatest hero, brought to you by corporate greed and laboratory science. Tell me about your world, Troi said. About what heroes mean there. Homelander was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, paced to the window, his silhouette framed against the stars. In my world, heroes are brands. Products. We have powers, sure, but we also have PR teams and marketing campaigns and approval ratings. I was the best because I tested well in demographics, because I could smile for cameras and say the right things. But it was always fake. All of it. The heroism, the saving people. It was all about maintaining the image. But you did save people, Troi pointed out. At Theta Cygni 7, you genuinely helped. Did I? Or did I just see an opportunity to feel important again? To have people look at me the way they used to? He turned to face her, and in the dim light, his eyes seemed to glow faintly. You felt what I'm feeling, Counselor. Back when we first met. You know what's inside me. I know you're in pain. I know you're terrified of being irrelevant, of not matching. But I also know. You don't know anything. The outburst came suddenly, his voice rising. You've spent your entire life around well-adjusted Starfleet officers with their evolved Federation morality. You have no idea what it's like to be created for a purpose, to have every moment of your childhood monitored and measured and optimized, to never have a mother, never have love, just scientists studying you like an experiment. You're right, Troi said softly. I don't know that. But I know something else. You're not defined by how you were created. None of us are. Humanity spent centuries believing we were victims of our biology, our circumstances, our nature. But we learned that we have the capacity to choose who we become. Easy to say when you're actually human. When you weren't pumped full of chemicals before you could even speak. Turn into something that looks human but fundamentally isn't. Data wasn't born human either, Troi observed. He was constructed, programmed, created with a specific purpose. And yet he's chosen to become more than his design parameters. He's developed friendships, curiosity, even the capacity for growth that approaches genuine emotion. Data's a machine. I'm worse. I'm a mistake that thinks it's a god. Troi stood, moved closer to him. Then why did you cry when that little girl touched your cape? Homelander's head snapped toward her, his expression shocked. I didn't. I felt it. Not just the emotion, but the physical response you suppressed. When Mira reached out to you, when she called you a superhero, you wanted to cry. Because for one moment, someone saw you as something good. Something worth admiring not because of your power, but because of your choice to use it to help. Stop. That's what terrifies you most, isn't it? Not that people will fear you or hate you, but that they might actually love you, and you won't know what to do with it. Because you've never experienced real love, only worship. And worship is just fear wearing a prettier mask. I said stop. Homelander's eyes flared red, heat building behind them. The air temperature in the room spiked noticeably. Troi didn't flinch. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. You should all be afraid of me. Do you understand what I could do to this ship? To everyone on it? I could tear through the hull like paper. I could kill every person aboard before your shields even activated. But you won't. How do you know? Because you're having this conversation instead of acting on your rage. Because you've had countless opportunities to hurt people since arriving on the Enterprise, and you haven't. Because despite everything you believe about yourself, you're choosing not to be the monster you fear you are. The red glow faded slowly from Homelander's eyes. He slumped against the window, exhausted. You don't understand, he said. In my world, I had structure. Vought controlled me, managed me, gave me scripts and scenarios. I knew my role. But here, I don't know what I'm supposed to be. And without that structure, without people telling me what to do and when to smile and how to perform, I don't know who I am. Then maybe that's an opportunity, Troi suggested. Not a crisis, but a chance to discover who you could become without the scripts, without Vought, without the performance. And what if who I become is worse? What if the only thing keeping me from being a complete monster was the fear of bad publicity? Is that what you believe? Homelander was quiet for a long time. I don't know what I believe anymore. Troi's comm badge chirped. Picard's voice. Counselor, please return to the bridge. We have a developing situation. On my way, Captain. She turned back to Homelander. I need to go, but I want you to think about something. The Federation doesn't need heroes in the way your world did. We need people willing to make difficult choices, to serve something larger than themselves. You have a chance to be that kind of person. The question is whether you're brave enough to try. She left him standing in the darkness, alone with his thoughts and the frozen image of his own face on the view screen. When she reached the bridge, Picard was standing before the main view screen, his expression grim. On screen, a vessel loomed, sleek, predatory, and unmistakably Romulan. "They've crossed the neutral zone," Riker reported from his station. "Warbird class, decloaking directly in our path. They're hailing us." On screen, Picard commanded. The image shifted to reveal a Romulan woman, severe features framed by the distinctive V-shaped uniform of the Tal Shiar. Her eyes held the calculating intelligence of someone who treated other beings as game pieces. "Captain Picard," she said, her voice the same one from the encrypted message. "I am Commander Sela of the Romulan Imperial Fleet. I believe you have something that belongs to the Empire." "The Enterprise carries no Romulan property or personnel," Picard replied coolly. "You violated the neutral zone without authorization. I must ask you to." "I'm not interested in your property or your personnel, Captain. I'm interested in your passenger. The one who calls himself Homelander. The one whose exploits at Theta Cygni 7 have reached even our ears across the neutral zone. Homelander is a guest aboard this vessel, not cargo to be claimed." "Is he?" Sela's smile was sharp as a blade. "Because from our analysis, he appears to be a weapon without a wielder. And nature abhors a vacuum, Captain. The Empire offers him something you cannot. A place where power is respected, not feared. Where strength is celebrated, not contained by democratic committees and moral equivocation. You're offering him servitude dressed up as freedom. And you're offering him what? Therapy sessions and first contact protocols? We've been monitoring communications, Captain. We know about the isolation, the suspicion, the fear your crew projects toward him." Sela leaned forward. "We're offering an alternative. Perhaps Homelander should be allowed to choose for himself." Picard felt the trap closing. Refused to let Homelander hear the offer and prove Sela's point about Federation containment. Allow the offer and risk losing an enormously powerful individual to an enemy state. "Captain," Worf's voice was urgent. "Homelander has left his quarters. He's heading for the bridge." Of course he was. He'd heard every word. Enhanced hearing, penetrating multiple decks. The turbolift doors opened. Homelander stepped onto the bridge, still wearing civilian clothes, but somehow commanding the space as if he owned it. Every eye turned toward him. He looked at the view screen, at Commander Sela's expectant expression, then at Picard. "So," he said quietly, "looks like I'm popular." The bridge had never felt smaller. Every console, every station, every carefully designed system suddenly seemed inadequate in the face of the choice being presented. Homelander stood between Picard and the view screen, his posture deceptively casual, his expression unreadable. Commander Sela's smile widened. "Homelander, I've heard remarkable things about you. The Tal Shiar has been monitoring Federation communications since your arrival. You saved 12,000 lives in less than an hour. You possess abilities that defy conventional physics. And yet," she gestured dismissively at the Enterprise bridge. "Here you are, confined to a starship, treated with suspicion by people who claim to value diversity while fearing anything that genuinely transcends their understanding. You don't know anything about me," Homelander said, but there was less conviction in his voice than Picard would have liked. "Don't I? You're a being of extraordinary power trapped in a society that has no place for extraordinary individuals. The Federation preaches equality, which means reducing everyone to the same mediocre level. They'll study you, limit you, and eventually ask you to suppress your abilities for the comfort of those around you. The Empire offers something different: recognition of your superiority, respect for your strength, freedom to use your power without apologizing for it." Picard stepped forward, positioning himself where Homelander couldn't ignore him. "Commander Sela is correct that the Federation values equality. But she misrepresents what that means. We don't reduce individuals to mediocrity. We ensure that every being has the opportunity to reach their full potential without trampling others in the process." "Pretty words, Captain," Sela countered. "But your actions speak differently. You've kept Homelander isolated, studied him like a laboratory specimen, and restricted his movements. Is that your idea of reaching one's potential?" "He's been aboard my ship for 5 days," Picard replied evenly. "He's experienced traumatic displacement from his reality, and we've been providing him time to adjust. That's not imprisonment. It's compassion. Is it compassion when you monitor his every movement? Sela's eyes gleamed with intelligence that suggested she knew more than she should. When you restrict his access to communications. When your security chief maintains constant surveillance. Worf's expression darkened, but he remained silent. Picard felt the dynamics shifting, the conversation becoming less about Homelander and more about Federation values versus Romulan pragmatism. Homelander, Sela continued, addressing him directly now. The Empire offers you a position of honor. Join us, and you'll command your own warbird. You'll have resources, territory, and the respect due to someone of your capabilities. You'll never have to pretend to be less than you are. For a long moment, Homelander said nothing. Picard could see him processing, weighing, considering. And in that silence, Picard realized how little they actually knew about this man. What he valued, what he feared, what he truly wanted. What's the catch? Homelander finally asked. Sela raised an eyebrow. Catch? There's always a catch. I wasn't born yesterday. You don't offer someone a warbird and command authority without expecting something in return. So what do you want from me? Loyalty, Sela said simply. The Empire rewards those who serve it well. Betray that loyalty and... She let the threat hang unfinished. So I trade Federation suspicion for Romulan ownership. Different masters, same leash. Homelander's laugh was bitter. You think I'm stupid? I know what the Tal Shiar does to assets who stop being useful. I've seen enough Black Ops organizations to recognize the pattern. Then you understand power dynamics, Sela acknowledged. Good. The Empire appreciates intelligence alongside strength. But consider your alternatives, Homelander. The Federation will never truly accept you. They'll always fear you. Always see you as an aberration to be managed rather than a person to be respected. At least the Empire is honest about its expectations. Picard saw his opening. She's right that honesty matters. So let me be honest with you, Homelander. Yes, there's fear aboard this vessel. You represent power beyond our conventional understanding, and fear of the unknown is a rational response. But fear and respect aren't mutually exclusive. We can fear your abilities while respecting your right to determine your own future. Can you? Homelander turned to face him fully. Because from where I stand, Captain, you've been making my decisions for me since I arrived. Quarantine in my quarters. Monitored communications. Security surveillance. You talk about respect, but you're treating me exactly like Vought did, like a valuable asset that needs managing. The accusation stung because it contained truth. Picard had made those decisions, had implemented those protocols. For good reasons, he believed, but the effect was the same. Control masquerading as protection. You're correct, Picard admitted. I have been cautious, perhaps excessively so. But my caution stems from responsibility to this crew, not from a desire to control you. If I've erred, it's on the side of protecting 1,500 people who cannot defend themselves against someone of your capabilities. At least he's honest about seeing you as a threat, Sela interjected. The Empire would see you as a solution. To what? Data asked, speaking for the first time. His question was genuine curiosity rather than accusation. What specific problem would Homelander's abilities solve for the Romulan Empire? Sela's expression flickered with annoyance at the interruption. The Empire faces challenges from multiple adversaries. The Federation, the Klingon, internal dissent. Someone of Homelander's unique capabilities could be a weapon, Homelander finished. That's what you mean. You want me to kill for you? To use my power to intimidate, to conquer, to enforce your will on people who can't fight back. Is that so different from what you did in your own universe? Sela's voice was sharp now, calculated. We've analyzed the fragmentary data that accompanied your dimensional transfer. Vought International. The Seven. You were a corporate weapon there, used to maintain market dominance and social control. At least the Empire wouldn't pretend otherwise. Homelander's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? The Tal Shiar has extensive experience identifying and analyzing psychological profiles. You were conditioned from childhood to serve power structures while being told you were free. The only difference is whether you serve a corporation, a government, or yourself. And serving yourself has never worked out well for you, has it? The psychological strike hit home. Picard saw Homelander's hands clench, saw the micro-expression of pain flash across his face before the mask reasserted itself. Captain, Counselor Troi said quietly from her station. I'm sensing extreme emotional volatility. This conversation is necessary, Homelander interrupted. For once, let's actually talk about what everyone's thinking instead of dancing around it. He looked directly at Picard. You want me to choose the Federation because you think I'll be easier to control here. Rules, regulations, moral frameworks I don't understand. Keep me contained while you figure out what to do with me. That is not. And you, Homelander continued, turning to the view screen, want me to choose the Empire because you think my psychology makes me easy to manipulate. Play to my ego, promise me power and respect, then use me as a blunt instrument against your enemies. Sela's expression remained neutral, but Picard detected a hint of respect in her eyes. The truth, Homelander said, his voice dropping to something quieter and more dangerous, is that you're both right. I'm psychologically damaged, I crave validation, and I'm desperately trying to figure out who I am in a universe where nobody knows my name. But here's what neither of you understands. I've spent my entire life being used by people who thought they could control me, and I'm done with that. Then what do you want? Picard asked simply. The question seemed to catch Homelander off guard. He opened his mouth, closed it, struggled visibly with an answer. I want. He paused, and for a moment the manufactured confidence cracked completely. I want to matter. I want to be something real instead of a performance. I want to look in the mirror and see a person instead of a product. The Empire can give you purpose, Sela said. Direction. A place where. The Empire would give me orders, Homelander cut her off. Dressed up as respect, but still orders. And the Federation would give me therapy and guidelines and carefully structured opportunities to reach my potential within acceptable parameters. You're both offering me different flavors of the same cage. Picard felt the conversation reaching a critical juncture. Everything he said next would matter enormously. You're right, he said quietly. We are both trying to influence your choice. That's the nature of first contact situations. Everyone has agendas. Everyone has concerns. But here's what I can offer you that the Empire cannot. Genuine choice, without preconditions or expectations. Explain, Homelander demanded. If you choose to remain aboard the Enterprise, you do so as a guest, not a prisoner or an asset. We'll continue working to understand the dimensional rift and find a way to return you home. If you prefer, we can arrange transport to any Federation world where you might establish a life independent of Starfleet. Or, Picard paused, choosing his words carefully. If you choose to join the Romulans, I won't stop you. I'll disagree with your decision. I'll worry about the consequences, but I'll respect your right to make it. You'd let me go? Skepticism dripped from Homelander's voice. Just like that? Even knowing what I could do to help the Romulan Empire against the Federation. I would. Because the alternative, forcing you to remain against your will, would make everything the Empire says about us true. We would become captors rather than hosts. And that violates everything the Federation stands for. Sela laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. How noble, Captain. How perfectly Starfleet. Tell me, does your crew agree with this generous offer? Lieutenant Worf, for instance, looks as though he'd prefer to throw Homelander in the brig rather than let him anywhere near Romulus. All eyes turned to Worf. The Klingon security chief stood rigid at his station, his expression thunderous. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but barely. The captain's decision is the captain's decision. I will implement it regardless of my personal opinions. But you have opinions, Sela pressed. Share them. Let Homelander hear what his potential allies really think. Commander Sela, Picard warned. No, Homelander said. Let him talk. I want to hear it. Worf's eyes fixed on Homelander with Klingon directness. You are powerful. Potentially more powerful than anything I have encountered. You could be a great asset or a terrible threat. I do not trust you because trust must be earned through consistent, honorable behavior over time, and you have been here only days. But, he paused, and something shifted in his expression. At Theta Cygni 7, you followed orders. You worked as part of a team. You controlled your power when you could have showboated. That suggests the capacity for honor, even if you do not recognize it in yourself. The unexpected praise seemed to affect Homelander more than any of Sela's manipulation or Picard's philosophy. He struggled for words. I just did what needed doing. That is what honor is, Worf replied. Doing what needs doing. even when it brings you no glory. Sela's image on the view screen flickered with annoyance. Touching. But Lieutenant Worf's opinion doesn't change the fundamental reality. The Federation will always see you as an outsider, Homelander, an aberration. No matter how many colonies you save, no matter how well you follow orders, you'll never truly belong among them. Perhaps not, Picard acknowledged. But belonging isn't given. It's built through shared experiences and mutual respect. Homelander has been here less than a week. It's too soon to make pronouncements about what he will or won't become to this crew. Pretty words again, Captain. But I notice you haven't offered him what he actually wants, adoration. Worship. The kind of absolute devotion that Theta Sigma 7 gave him so freely. Because that's not healthy, Counselor Troi interjected, her voice firm. What Homelander needs and what he wants are different things. Feeding his need for worship would only reinforce the psychological patterns that have caused him so much pain. Listen to yourself, Sela said. Even your counselor treats him like a patient to be managed rather than a person to be respected. The Empire wouldn't presume to fix you, Homelander. We'd accept you as you are. As a weapon, Homelander replied. Let's not pretend otherwise. I've seen enough political maneuvering to recognize what you're doing, Commander. You're trying to make me angry at the Federation, trying to push my buttons so I'll choose Romulus out of spite. But I'm not that easy to manipulate anymore. Sela's eyebrow arched. Implying you were once easily manipulated? I was a lab rat who did what Vought told me because I didn't know there were alternatives. But I've learned. And one thing I've learned is that anyone who promises you everything is lying. You're lying, Commander. The question is what you're lying about. For the first time, Sela's composure cracked slightly. I'm offering you a genuine opportunity. You're offering me servitude with better PR. Homelander cut her off. At least Captain Picard is honest about the complications. You're selling me a fantasy. Then you choose the Federation? Sela's voice hardened. How disappointing. I thought you were smarter than that. I'm not choosing anyone, Homelander said. Not yet. I need time to think, away from both of your recruitment pitches. He turned and walked toward the turbolift, ignoring both Picard and the view screen. At the threshold, he paused. Captain, I'm going to the holodeck. I assume that's not restricted. It's not, Picard confirmed. You're free to use any recreational facilities aboard the ship. Good. Because I need to clear my head before making any decisions about my future. He stepped into the turbolift, the doors closing behind him. Sela's laugh echoed through the bridge speakers. Well played, Captain. You've convinced him to stay aboard your ship while he thinks. How convenient. But this conversation isn't over. The Empire's offer remains open, Homelander. She raised her voice, knowing he could hear through the ship's hull. When you tire of their suspicion and their therapy, contact us. The Tal Shiar is always listening. The view screen went dark as the Romulan vessel cloaked and withdrew back across the neutral zone. Picard released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Counselor, your assessment. He's genuinely conflicted, Troi replied. Everything Sela said about the Federation's fear resonated with him because it's what he's experienced. But everything we've said about manipulation and control resonated too because it's what he's trying to escape. He's caught between two bad options, and he knows it. Then we need to offer him a third option, Riker suggested. Something that's neither Federation recruitment nor Romulan servitude. What did you have in mind, number one? Let him figure out who he is without pressure from either side. Give him actual freedom, no monitoring, no restrictions, no expectations. Let him prove to himself what he's capable of when nobody's giving him a script. That's a considerable security risk, Worf observed. It is, Riker agreed. But it might be the only way to earn his genuine trust instead of his resentful compliance. Picard considered this, weighing risk against potential. Mr. Data, what is Homelander doing now? Data consulted his console. He has accessed Holodeck 2 and initiated a program. It appears to be a recreation of New York City, early 21st century. Specifically, the Vought Tower. He's recreating his home, Troi said softly. The world he lost. Picard made his decision. No monitoring. No surveillance. Whatever he does in that holodeck, we give him privacy. It's time we actually trusted him with freedom and saw what he does with it. Captain, Worf began. That's an order, Lieutenant. Homelander is our guest, not our prisoner. And guests deserve privacy. As the bridge crew returned to their stations, Picard couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just passed one test only to face a more difficult one ahead. Because somewhere in a holodeck, a man with godlike power was confronting the ghosts of his past, and nobody knew what he would become when he emerged. The holodeck's recreation of Vought Tower was perfect in every detail. The gleaming corporate architecture, the omnipresent branding, the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a Manhattan skyline Homelander would never see again. He stood in the Seven's meeting room, surrounded by empty chairs where his teammates should have been. Maeve, A-Train, the Deep, Black Noir, Translucent, Starlight, gone. All of them gone. Not dead, worse. They'd never existed in this universe. Every relationship, every rivalry, every complicated history erased by dimensional barriers that might as well be infinite. Computer, Homelander said quietly. Populate the room with the 7 last known configurations from my memories. Unable to comply. Insufficient data for accurate character generation. Of course, the holodeck could only work with what it knew, and it knew nothing about his world. He was alone, even in his own memories. He'd been alone before. That was nothing new. But this was different. This was isolation on a cosmic scale. At least in his universe, people knew who he was. Feared him. Worshipped him. Hated him. Knew him. Here, he was nobody. A curiosity. An anomaly to be studied. The doors to the meeting room opened. Homelander spun, laser vision half-charging, then stopped. It was himself. Not a reflection. A holographic duplicate, standing in the doorway wearing the costume, the cape, the manufactured smile he knew so well. The computer must have extrapolated from available data, creating a simulacrum based on his appearance. Computer, what is this? You requested population of the meeting room. There was insufficient data to recreate your teammates, so the program generated a conversation partner based on available parameters. Yourself. Homelander stared at his own face, seeing the mask he wore for the world. The perfect smile. The confident posture. The carefully controlled expression that revealed nothing authentic. Delete it, he said. Specify deletion parameters. Delete everything. End program. The tower dissolved, leaving Homelander standing in the holodeck's empty grid. He stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, fighting the urge to scream or cry or punch through the bulkhead. What was he doing? Hiding in a simulation of a life he'd hated? Recreating a world that had broken him? Computer, new program. Show me. Show me Earth. Federation Earth. Present day. New York City. The grid transformed. But instead of Vought Tower's corporate dominance, he found himself in a city that was simultaneously familiar and alien. The geography was right, the rivers, the basic street grid. But the architecture was different. Cleaner. More integrated with green spaces. The advertisements were gone, replaced by public art installations and community information displays. And the people. Homelander walked through the simulated streets, studying the holographic citizens going about their lives. They were diverse in ways that went beyond skin color. He saw humans mingling with aliens, cyborgs interfacing seamlessly with organic beings, children playing without fear or supervision. Nobody was looking at their phones because there were no phones. Nobody was rushing because there was nowhere urgent to be. Nobody was homeless. Nobody was begging. Nobody looked hungry or desperate or afraid. It was wrong. Not in the sense of inaccurate. The computer was pulling this data from Federation archives, so it was probably close to reality. But wrong in that it violated everything Homelander understood about how societies worked. Computer, crime statistics for this city. Violent crime rate, 0.03 incidents per 100,000 population annually. 0.01 incidents per 100,000 population annually. That's impossible. Federation Earth eliminated poverty, hunger, and economic desperation through matter replication technology and universal resource allocation. Most crime motivations were eliminated. Remaining incidents are primarily psychological aberrations treated through therapy rather than incarceration. Therapy, Homelander muttered. Of course, everything's solved with talking. He wandered through the simulation, searching for something familiar. A mugging, a fight, any sign of the chaos and desperation he understood. But there was nothing. Just people living their lives with a contentment that felt almost obscene. Where are the heroes? He asked suddenly. Clarify query. The heroes. The people who save others, who fight crime, who protect the innocent. Where are they? Starfleet serves in that capacity for interplanetary threats. Planetary security forces handle rare incidents of violence. However, the concept of heroes as individual actors operating outside institutional frameworks is largely obsolete in Federation society. Such individuals are considered historical curiosities from Earth's pre-warp era. Obsolete. The word hit like a physical blow. In his world, heroes were everything. Cultural icons, corporate properties, symbols of power and justice and American exceptionalism. In this world, they were museum pieces. Evolutionary dead-ends from a more primitive time. What did that make him? Homelander's hands clenched into fists. The holographic citizens continued their peaceful existence, unaware of the god standing among them, unaware that he could end every simulated life in this city with a thought. Computer, freeze program. Everything stopped. The people, the vehicles, even the simulated wind. Homelander stood in the silence, master of a frozen world, and felt absolutely nothing. No satisfaction, no power, just emptiness. This is what they want me to become, he said to the frozen city. Content, peaceful, evolved beyond the need to be special. Just another person in a society where everyone's equal because nobody's allowed to stand out. But even as he said it, he knew it was unfair. He'd seen Data, an android treated as an individual with rights and dignity despite being artificial. He'd seen Worf, a Klingon serving aboard a human vessel, respected for his perspective rather than rejected for his differences. The Federation didn't demand uniformity. It demanded something harder, choosing to use your distinctiveness in service of something larger than yourself. Computer, resume program. Show me Starfleet Academy. The scene shifted. A campus sprawling across San Francisco Bay, buildings integrated with natural landscape, students of dozens of species studying together. Homelander walked among them, invisible to the holographic cadets, watching them interact. He saw humans and Vulcans debating philosophy, Andorians and Tellarites competing in athletic competitions, species he didn't recognize working together on engineering projects that seemed to defy physics. And they were happy. Not the performative happiness of his world, where everything was filtered through social media and approval metrics. Genuine engagement with ideas, with each other, with the future they were building. Computer, could I attend Starfleet Academy? Insufficient data to determine eligibility. Starfleet admission requirements focus on aptitude, character, and commitment to Federation values. Physical capabilities are relevant, but not primary selection criteria. Your enhanced abilities would be noted, but would not automatically qualify or disqualify you. Homelander tried to imagine it, sitting in classes, taking tests, following a curriculum designed for people who weren't already the most powerful being in any room. Learning to be part of something instead of standing above it. The image wouldn't form. It was too alien, too incompatible with everything he'd been created to be. Computer, end. The holodeck doors opened. Homelander spun, ready to incinerate whoever had interrupted his privacy, but stopped when he saw who stood in the entrance. Data, the android, holding a small device that looked like a sophisticated tricorder. Forgive the intrusion, Data said with characteristic politeness. However, I detected unusual power fluctuations from this holodeck and wished to ensure the systems were functioning properly. Captain Picard ordered that your privacy be respected, but equipment safety falls under my operational responsibilities. The holodeck's fine, Homelander said, his defensive walls slamming into place. I'm just running simulations. Data's golden eyes surveyed the frozen San Francisco scene. You are researching Federation Earth. Specifically, educational institutions. An interesting choice. I'm trying to understand this place. This universe. Everything's so different from what I know. Different, but perhaps not incomprehensibly so. Data stepped into the holodeck, the doors closing behind him. May I ask what specifically you find most challenging to understand? Homelander gestured at the frozen academy scene. This, all of it. A society without crime, without poverty, without the need for heroes. Where I come from, people need saving constantly. There's always a threat, always danger, always someone who needs protecting. It gave me purpose, even if that purpose was manufactured by corporate interests. And you fear that in a society with minimal external threats, you have no purpose. I don't fear it. I know it. Homelander's voice was bitter. I'm a weapon built for a war that doesn't exist here. I'm obsolete, just like your computer said. Data tilted his head in that curious gesture Homelander was beginning to recognize as his version of deep thought. May I share an observation? Sure. Why not? Everyone else has been psychoanalyzing me since I arrived. I, too, am obsolete. Homelander blinked. What? I was created by Dr. Sung using technology that is now considered antiquated. Modern androids can be constructed more efficiently, with more advanced positronic matrices and superior cognitive capabilities. By objective measures, I am an outdated model, a prototype that should have been superseded by improved designs. But you're an officer on the Enterprise. Second officer, they said. Precisely. I earned that position not because of my specifications or my processing power, but because I chose to develop skills that contributed to Starfleet's mission. I studied. I learned. I grew beyond my original programming to become something my creator never anticipated. Homelander stared at the android, processing the parallel. You're saying I could do the same thing. Learn to be more than what I was designed for. I am saying that obsolescence is a choice. You can remain defined by your original purpose, to be a corporate weapon serving power structures. Or you can choose to become something new, something unprecedented. The question is whether you possess the courage to attempt such fundamental self-transformation. That's the second time someone's questioned my courage today, Homelander said quietly. Is it? Then perhaps it is a question worth confronting honestly. Data moved closer, studying Homelander with those penetrating golden eyes. You possess extraordinary abilities. But courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to act despite fear. Are you afraid of becoming something you were not designed to be? Yes, Homelander admitted, the word torn from somewhere deep and honest. I'm terrified. Because what if I try to be better and fail? What if I'm fundamentally broken in ways that can't be fixed? What if the only thing I'm good at is being a monster who looks like a hero? Then you would be in good company, Data replied. Do you know how many crew members aboard the Enterprise struggle with similar concerns? Commander Riker fears inadequacy compared to Captain Picard. Lieutenant Worf fears his Klingon nature makes him too violent for Starfleet service. Counselor Troi fears her empathic abilities are insufficient to help those in profound psychological pain. Even Captain Picard doubts himself constantly, wondering if his decisions will lead to catastrophic consequences. But they're human? Except for Lieutenant Worf and myself, yes. But humanity's defining characteristic is not perfection. It is the capacity for growth despite imperfection. That is what the Federation celebrates. Not the absence of flaws, but the courage to confront them and evolve beyond them. Homelander looked at the frozen academy scene, at the students learning and growing and becoming something more than they were. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I have whatever it takes to be better. Neither did I when I was first activated, Data said. I am still uncertain whether I will ever truly achieve humanity. But the attempt itself has given my existence meaning and purpose beyond my original design parameters. Perhaps that is enough. They stood together in silence for a moment, an android and a manufactured superhuman, both struggling with the fundamental question of what they could become. Data, Homelander said finally, why did you really come here? The holodeck power fluctuations are negligible. You could have monitored them remotely. You are correct. I came because Counselor Troi suggested you might benefit from speaking with someone who understands the experience of being created rather than born. Someone who has grappled with questions of identity and purpose from a similar existential position. She sent you to therapy me. She suggested I might offer perspective. The decision to come was mine, as was the decision to share my own struggles. I am not therapizing you, Data paused. That is not a real word, is it? Despite everything, Homelander felt a smile tug at his lips. No, it's not. Nonetheless, I am offering friendship. If you wish to accept it. Friendship. Homelander tried to remember the last time anyone had offered him genuine friendship rather than strategic alliance or fearful appeasement. He couldn't. I'll think about it, he said. That is all I ask. Data turned toward the door, then paused. One more thing, if I may. The Romulans offered you command of a warbird and military purpose. The Federation offers uncertainty and the difficult work of self-improvement. But there is a third option you have not yet considered. What's that? Discovering your own purpose, independent of what others want from you. The dimensional rift that brought you here remains active. We are working to understand it, to potentially use it to return you home. But we may also discover other possibilities, other universes, other realities where different versions of you may exist. You could explore not just this universe, but the multiverse itself. Become something unprecedented. A traveler between realities, helping those who exist in the spaces between worlds. The idea struck Homelander with unexpected force. Not bound to one universe, one identity, one definition of what he should be. Free to move between realities, to see infinite versions of existence, to be genuinely unique in a way that served actual purpose rather than corporate branding. That's actually interesting, he admitted. It is also purely hypothetical at this point. But it represents a future you could choose rather than have chosen for you. I thought you should know that possibility exists. Data left, the holodeck doors closing behind him. Homelander stood alone in the frozen Academy simulation, his mind racing with new possibilities. Computer, show me the dimensional rift. The real one. Real-time feed. The Academy dissolved. In its place, a massive tear in space rotated slowly against the starfield, bleeding impossible colors and energies into normal reality. It was beautiful and terrible and completely unpredictable. It was also his only way home, or his doorway to infinity. Homelander raised his hand toward the holographic rift, as if he could touch it, as if he could reach through it to grasp whatever future waited on the other side. Computer, what's on the other side? Unknown. The rift's internal structure prevents accurate scanning. Destination is indeterminate. Unknown. Indeterminate. Unpredictable. For the first time since arriving in this universe, Homelander smiled, genuinely smiled, because he'd just realized something crucial. He didn't have to choose between the Federation's path and the Romulan path. He could choose his own. The Enterprise's stellar cartography lab was empty at 0300 hours, exactly as Homelander had planned. He'd spent the past 2 days studying the ship's layout, learning its rhythms, understanding when certain sections would be unoccupied. Not because he was planning anything malicious, but because he needed space to think without the weight of suspicious eyes tracking his every movement. The dimensional rift rotated in holographic display before him, rendered in 3 dimensions with data overlays showing energy patterns, quantum signatures, and subspace distortions. He'd accessed the Enterprise's scientific database, absorbing everything they knew about dimensional physics, parallel universes, and reality mechanics. It wasn't much. For all their advanced technology, the Federation barely understood the rift that had brought him here. Interesting choice of late-night reading material. Homelander spun to find Captain Picard standing in the entrance, holding a data pad and wearing casual civilian clothes. Not his uniform. Just a simple outfit that made him look less like a starship captain and more like a thoughtful academic. I thought you said I wasn't being monitored, Homelander said, defensive walls rising automatically. You're not. I'm here because I often come to stellar cartography when I can't sleep. It helps me think. Picard moved into the room, glancing at the rift display. I didn't expect company, but I'm not disappointed by it. May I? Homelander gestured to the console opposite his. Picard settled in, studying the same data with the focused attention Homelander was beginning to recognize as his default mode. They worked in silence for several minutes, each absorbed in their own analysis. It was strangely comfortable, no pressure to perform, no expectations to meet, just 2 beings examining the same mystery from different perspectives. You're looking for a way home, Picard observed finally. We're looking for something else. I'm not certain which. Does it matter? It might. Going home and moving forward are different motivations with different implications. Homelander studied the older man carefully. You're not going to try to convince me to stay? Give me the whole Federation needs you speech? Would you like me to? Not particularly. Then I won't. Picard manipulated his console, pulling up additional data streams. However, I will share what we've learned about your rift. Mr. Data has been analyzing its structure continuously since your arrival. The quantum signature is extraordinarily complex, far more so than conventional wormholes or spatial anomalies we've encountered. Meaning what? Meaning it may not be a simple doorway between two universes. Data's preliminary findings suggest the rift connects not to one alternate reality, but to multiple potential realities simultaneously. It's less a tunnel and more a nexus point. A intersection of infinite possible timelines. Homelander's enhanced vision focused on the data, processing the mathematical models faster than any human should be able to. You're saying it could lead anywhere. Any version of any universe. Potentially. Though navigating it would require understanding dimensional coordinates we don't yet possess. Entering the rift without proper navigation would be. Picard paused, choosing his words carefully. Unwise. Unwise or suicidal. Perhaps both. Data estimates a 97% probability of molecular dissolution for anyone attempting to traverse the rift without specialized shielding and quantum stabilization. Even with such protection, there's no guarantee of reaching a desired destination. Homelander leaned back, processing this. His way home, if it even existed, was blocked by technology the Federation didn't have and physics they barely understood. He was trapped, not by bars or force fields, but by the simple reality that diving into that rift would atomize him. However, Picard continued, his tone shifting slightly. Data believes he may be able to develop the necessary technology, given time. 6 months, perhaps a year of intensive research. He's already begun working on theoretical models for quantum stabilization fields. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth about your situation. You're not a prisoner here, but you're also not free to leave. Not because we're preventing you, but because the universe itself presents a barrier. That's important context for whatever decisions you make about your future. Homelander studied Picard's face, searching for deception or manipulation. He found neither, just honest concern and genuine respect for his autonomy. The Romulans don't know about this, Homelander realized. About the rift being a death trap without proper technology. They suspect, but they don't have our detailed scans. Commander Sela was likely hoping you'd accept her offer before learning the full truth about your situation. And you're telling me because? Because I'd rather you make decisions based on complete information rather than strategic omissions. Picard pulled up another data stream, news feeds from across Federation space. I should also inform you that your fame is spreading. The Theta Cygni 7 rescue has been picked up by news services throughout the Federation. You're becoming something of a phenomenon. The displays showed dozens of articles, video reports, and social media discussions about Homelander. Speculation about his origins. Debates about whether he represented a new evolutionary step or an anomaly. Requests for interviews, appearances, endorsement opportunities. It was eerily familiar, exactly like his life before, except the branding was different. No Vought logos, but the same fundamental dynamic. People packaging him into narratives that had nothing to do with who he actually was. They're doing it again, Homelander said quietly. Turning me into a symbol instead of a person. Yes, and there's very little I can do to stop it. The Federation values free speech and free press. People will speculate, will create narratives, will project their own hopes and fears onto you regardless of your wishes. Then what's the point? The frustration broke through Homelander's carefully maintained control. Data said I could choose my own purpose, but everyone else is choosing for me. The Romulans want a weapon. The Federation wants. I don't even know what you want. And the civilians want a hero they can worship or fear depending on their political leanings. Where's my choice in any of this? Picard stood, moved to the central display, and gestured at the rift. Your choice is here. In how you respond to external pressures. The universe, any universe, will always try to define you. People will always project their expectations onto you. That's unavoidable. But you choose how much power those external definitions have over your internal sense of self. That's easy to say when you're human. When you were raised normally, with parents and childhood and development that didn't happen in a laboratory. You're correct. I had advantages you didn't. Picard's voice carried unexpected emotion. But I've also experienced profound trauma. I was assimilated by the Borg, Homelander. My identity was stripped away, my body violated and transformed into a weapon against my own people. For months after my rescue, I couldn't look in the mirror without seeing the machinery they'd implanted in me, without remembering the feeling of complete loss of self. Homelander hadn't known this. The database had mentioned something about Borg encounters, but not the personal details. I had to choose, Picard continued, whether to let that experience define me as a victim or to reclaim my identity through conscious effort. I chose the latter. It wasn't easy. It required years of work, of confronting trauma, of rebuilding myself piece by piece. But the alternative was remaining broken forever. And you think I can do the same thing? Just decide to be better and magically heal decades of psychological damage? No. I think healing is a process, not a decision. But the choice to begin that process is what matters. And you've already begun, whether you realize it or not. How do you figure that? You're here, in stellar cartography, studying your options rather than making impulsive decisions. You engage with data's perspective rather than dismissing it. You haven't hurt anyone despite having countless opportunities and provocations. Those are choices, Homelander. Small ones, perhaps, but they accumulate into character. The words settled over Homelander like a weight, not oppressive, but grounding. He'd been thinking of change as some dramatic transformation, a single moment where he'd wake up as a different person. But maybe it was smaller than that. Maybe it was just making slightly better choices, consistently, until those choices became habits. The Romulans are going to contact me again, Homelander said. Aren't they? Almost certainly. Commander Sela doesn't give up easily. She'll wait until she thinks you're vulnerable, then make another offer. Probably a better one. What would you do? If you were me? Picard smiled slightly. I'm not you. My circumstances, my psychology, my history, all different. What I would do is irrelevant to what you should do. That's a diplomatic non-answer. It's an honest answer. I can't tell you what your purpose should be, Homelander. I can only encourage you to discover it for yourself rather than accepting someone else's definition. Even if my purpose ends up being something the Federation doesn't approve of, even then. Though I hope you'll choose a path that aligns with your better instincts rather than your worst ones. The console beeped. Picard glanced at it, his expression shifting to concern. What is it? Homelander asked. Long-range sensors are detecting a fleet of vessels approaching the rift from the Romulan side of the neutral zone. Multiple warbirds, heavy configuration. They're not attempting to hide their approach. Homelander's enhanced vision focused on the tactical display. 6 Romulan warbirds, moving in formation toward the dimensional rift. Toward the Enterprise. They're making a move, Homelander realized. Sela's done playing diplomatic games. So it would appear. Picard tapped his comm badge. Picard to bridge. Red alert. All senior staff to their stations. Mr. Worf, bring weapons and shields online. Aye, Captain, Worf's voice responded. Should I wake the crew? Not yet. Let's assess the situation first. Picard turned to Homelander. I need to get to the bridge. You're welcome to join me. Or you can remain here where it's safer. Safer, Homelander repeated. Captain, I can hear the Romulans' engine signatures from here. I can see their weapons charging. And I'm probably the only thing on this ship that their disruptors can't hurt. Where exactly would I be safer than on your bridge? Picard studied him for a moment, then nodded. Fair point. Come on, then. But I need you to understand something. On my bridge, I give orders, and you follow them. This isn't a debate about autonomy or respect. It's about chain of command during a crisis. Can you accept that? It was a test, Homelander realized. A chance to demonstrate whether he could function as part of a team during actual danger. I can, he said, and meant it. They moved through the ship's corridors at a brisk pace. Crew members were already responding to the alert, moving to stations with practiced efficiency. Homelander noticed how they looked at him now, still wary, but also curious. Word of his cooperation during the Theta Cygni rescue had spread through the ship's rumor networks. The bridge doors opened to reveal organized chaos. Worf at tactical, his fingers dancing across weapons controls. Data at ops, processing sensor data faster than any biological being could. Riker in the command chair, already directing shield configurations and defensive postures. Captain on the bridge, someone announced, and Riker vacated the center seat immediately. Picard settled into command, like putting on familiar clothing. Status, number 1. 6 Romulan warboats in attack formation, approaching at warp 6. ETA to our position, 14 minutes. They're not responding to hails, and their weapons are already charged. Tactical assessment, Mr. Worf? 6 warbirds against the Enterprise. Worf's expression was grim. We could hold them off temporarily, but not defeat them. If they're committed to destroying us, we'll need reinforcement. The nearest Starfleet vessel is the USS Lexington, 4 hours away at maximum warp, Data reported. We are effectively alone. They're not here to destroy the Enterprise, Homelander said, drawing every eye on the bridge. They're here for the rift. And for me. Explain, Picard commanded. Homelander moved to the view screen, his enhanced vision processing the tactical display. Look at their formation. It's not optimized for ship-to-ship combat. They're positioning to secure the rift itself, creating a perimeter. They're going to claim the dimensional nexus as Romulan territory and offer me one last chance to join them before sealing it off. An audacious strategy, Data observed. But effective. If the Romulans control access to the rift, they control your only potential route home. Captain, Counselor Troi said from her station, her voice strained. I'm sensing determination, overwhelming confidence. They believe they've already won. The view screen shifted to show the approaching warbirds, their distinctive bird-of-prey silhouettes growing larger against the starfield. Beautiful ships, Homelander thought. Predatory and elegant, and absolutely committed to whatever mission Sela had given them. Captain Picard. A familiar voice echoed through the bridge speakers. Commander Sela's image appeared on the view screen, replacing the tactical display. How convenient to find you still here. I hope you've had time to reconsider the Empire's generous offer. Commander Sela, you've crossed into Federation space with a battle fleet. This is an act of war. Is it? We're simply investigating a dimensional anomaly that poses a potential threat to both our peoples. The fact that it happens to be in disputed territory is unfortunate, but I'm sure we can come to an arrangement. The rift is in Federation space, Commander. You have no legal claim to it. Legal claims are for diplomats, Captain. I'm a soldier, and I claim what I can hold. Sela's eyes shifted to find Homelander on the bridge. There you are. I was hoping you'd be present for this conversation. Have you made your decision? Homelander felt every eye on the bridge turn toward him. This was the moment, the crisis that would reveal what he'd actually become in the days since arriving in this universe. He could join the Romulans. Take command of their fleet, become their weapon, embrace the simplicity of serving power rather than questioning it. He could stay with the Federation, accept their therapy and their gradual approach to healing, become part of their utopian society even if he never truly belonged. Or he could choose a third option, one that nobody had anticipated. I've made my decision, Homelander said, his voice carrying across the bridge with absolute certainty. I'm not joining you, Commander. I'm not joining the Federation either. I'm staying right here until I figure out who the hell I actually am without someone else writing the script. Sela's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. Captains of the fleet, target the Federation vessel. Disable their engines, but avoid destroying them. We'll give Homelander one final opportunity to reconsider while watching his new friends die. Homelander, Picard said quietly, urgently, get to a safe location. Now. With respect, Captain, no. You set on your bridge, you give orders, and I follow them. So give me an order I can actually follow. Tell me how to help. Picard looked at him for one long moment. Then a slight smile crossed his face, grim, but genuine. Very well. Mr. Worf, what are our tactical options? Limited, sir. Our shields can withstand their initial barrage, but sustained fire from 6 warbirds will overwhelm us within minutes. Then we won't give them minutes, Picard decided. Homelander, can you disable a warbird's weapon systems? If you can get me close enough, yes. But I need to know where to hit. Data, transmit Romulan warbird schematics to the view screen. Highlight weapons array vulnerabilities. The display shifted, showing the technical details of a Romulan warbird. Homelander's enhanced vision absorbed the information in seconds. Power conduits, weapon nodes, structural weak points. I see them, he said. But Captain, if I attack the Romulans, that's not self-defense. That's an act of war. The Federation will deal with the political consequences, Picard finished. Right now, I'm more concerned with keeping my crew alive. Are you willing to help us, or not? It was trust. Real trust. Picard was betting everything on the hope that Homelander had genuinely changed enough to fight for something other than worship or ego. "I'm willing," Homelander said, and discovered he meant it completely. "Then let's even the odds." Picard turned to his crew. "Red alert. Battle stations. And Homelander, welcome to Starfleet Tactics. Let me show you how we handle impossible situations." The Enterprise shuddered as the first disruptor volley hammered into its shields. Homelander watched the view screen, tracking energy discharge patterns with vision that could see across electromagnetic spectrums invisible to human eyes. "Shields holding at 82%, Worf reported, his voice steady despite the violence rocking the ship. "Return fire?" "Not yet," Picard commanded. "Mr. Data, angle our shields to deflect rather than absorb. Buy us time." "Adjusting shield harmonics now, Captain." Homelander moved closer to the view screen, his mind processing tactical information faster than any computer. 6 warbirds, coordinated fire patterns, rotating positions to prevent the Enterprise from targeting any single vessel effectively. It was textbook fleet tactics, overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. "They're hurting us," he said, "pushing us away from the rift. Sela wants control of the dimensional nexus before she finishes us off." "Correct assessment," Data confirmed. "At current trajectory, we will be forced out of rift proximity in 4.3 minutes. "Captain," Riker said from his station, "we could make a run for it. Jump to warp before they can establish a tractor lock. And abandon the rift to Romulan control? Unacceptable." Picard's fingers drummed on his armrest, the only outward sign of stress. The dimensional nexus represents access to potentially infinite universes. We cannot allow it to become a Romulan military asset. Another barrage struck. The bridge lights flickered as power conduits struggled to maintain stability. "Shields at 64%, Worf announced. "Captain, I must recommend." "Recommendation noted, Lieutenant." "Homelander, how fast can you disable a warbird's weapons?" "Depends on whether they're expecting me. If I can get close without them seeing me coming, maybe 30 seconds per ship." "They'll be expecting you after the first attack," Riker observed. "Their sensors will track your energy signature." "Not if we give them something else to track," Picard said. A plan was forming behind his eyes. Homelander could see the calculation happening. "Mr. Worf, prepare a full spread of photon torpedoes. Detonate them in a pattern around the lead warbird, close enough to blind their sensors, far enough to avoid actual damage. That will deplete our torpedo reserves by 30%, Worf said. "I'm aware. Do it anyway." "Homelander, the moment those torpedoes detonate, you exit through the shuttle bay and approach from their sensor blind spot. Data will transmit coordinates directly to you." "How?" Data's hands moved across his console. "I am modulating a subspace carrier wave to a frequency your enhanced hearing should detect. You will perceive it as a directional tone guiding you to optimal approach vectors." "You can do that." "The theory is sound. We will discover the practice momentarily." "Shields at 49%, Worf reported. "We cannot sustain this much longer." Picard stood, moving to stand beside Homelander. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that only Homelander could hear. "I'm trusting you with my crew's lives. If you have any doubts about following through, tell me now." Homelander met his gaze. "I could fly away right now, leave you to die, join the Romulans, or just disappear into space. You know that, right?" "Yes." "So why are you trusting me?" "Because trust isn't something you give only when it's safe. It's something you extend when the stakes matter most, as a statement of faith in someone's better nature." Picard's expression was serious but not grim. "You asked what the Federation wants from you. This is it, the choice to stand with others when it would be easier to stand apart. Not because you're ordered to, not because you'll be worshipped for it, but because it's right." The words hit harder than any of Sela's manipulation or Troi's psychological insights. This was simple, direct, honest. Be better because better matters. "I won't let you down," Homelander said. "I know." Picard returned to his command chair. "Mr. Worf, fire when ready." Torpedoes away. The view screen lit up as a dozen photon torpedoes streaked toward the lead Romulan warbird. They detonated in precise sequence, creating a cascading wave of energy that washed over the vessel's sensor arrays like flashbulbs blinding a camera. "Now, Homelander." Homelander didn't run for the shuttle bay. He simply punched through the bridge ceiling, through 3 decks of superstructure, through the hull itself into hard vacuum. Alarms shrieked behind him as emergency bulkheads sealed the breach. He'd apologize for that later. Space was silent and vast and perfect. Homelander oriented himself, listening for Data's promised signal. There, a high-pitched tone only his enhanced hearing could detect, directional and precise. He followed it, accelerating to velocities that would have turned any unprotected human into superheated plasma. The lead warbird loomed before him, its shields still cycling from the torpedo detonations. Homelander could see the weapon arrays exactly where Data's schematics had shown them. Power conduits feeding disruptor banks, torpedo launchers humming with ready ordnance. He hit the first weapons array at full speed, his fist driving through shields weakened by the photon torpedo cascade. Metal screamed and tore. The disruptor bank exploded in a shower of plasma that would have vaporized anyone else. Homelander barely felt it as he tore through the ship's hull to reach the second array. 30 seconds, he'd promised. He did it in 20. The warbird's weapons went dark, emergency systems struggling to contain the damage. Homelander heard Data's guiding tone shift, directing him toward the second vessel. But the Romulans had adjusted. Disruptor fire tracked his movement, multiple ships coordinating to create overlapping fields of fire. The energy blast struck him like physical blows, not damaging, but enough to slow him down. They've adapted their targeting protocols. Data's voice crackled through the subspace carrier wave, somehow transmitting actual speech now. They are attempting to overwhelm you with sustained fire. I noticed. Homelander dodged another barrage, but there were too many angles to avoid them all. The disruptors couldn't hurt him, but they could keep him from reaching his targets. Captain, he heard Worf's distant voice through the signal. Homelander is being suppressed. He cannot reach the remaining warbirds. Then we changed tactics, Picard replied. Helm, take us directly at the second warbird. Full impulse. Sir, they're weapons. I'm aware. Do it. The Enterprise surged forward, shields flaring as it absorbed concentrated fire from multiple warbirds. But the maneuver did exactly what Picard intended. It drew fire away from Homelander, creating an opening. He took it. The second warbird's weapons arrays disappeared under his assault, torn apart with surgical precision. Then the third. Each time, the Enterprise absorbed punishment to give him openings, Picard sacrificing shield integrity to enable Homelander's attacks. Shields at 12%, Worf announced, his voice tense. Hull breaches on decks 7, 9, and 14. Casualties reported. People were dying. The thought hit Homelander like a physical blow. People were dying because Picard had chosen to trust him, because the Enterprise was creating openings for him, because he wasn't fast enough or precise enough. No, he said aloud. Not happening. He pushed himself harder, faster, beyond anything he'd attempted before. The fourth warbird's weapons died. The fifth. Each assault was faster than the last, his enhanced biology adapting to the pattern, optimizing movements, eliminating wasted energy. The sixth warbird saw him coming and tried to cloak. Homelander's enhanced vision tracked the gravitational distortion of its mass, the heat signature of its engines. He tore through the cloaking field like tissue paper and ripped away its weapons in a fury of motion that took less than 10 seconds. Silence. Homelander hung in space, surrounded by 6 disabled warbirds, breathing hard despite not needing oxygen. Around him, debris from destroyed weapons arrays drifted in the void. The Enterprise hung nearby, shields flickering, hull breaches visible across multiple decks, but intact. Alive. Commander Sila's voice crackled across open channels. Impressive. You're even more powerful than our intelligence suggested. But you've just committed an act of war against the Romulan Empire. 6 warbirds damaged. Crew casualties. The Senate will demand blood for this. Homelander flew toward the Enterprise, finding the shuttle bay instead of creating more hull breaches. As the atmospheric field sealed around him and gravity reasserted itself, he heard Picard's response through the ship's comm system. Your vessels crossed into Federation space with weapons charged and hostile intent, Commander. Homelander acted in defense of the ship and crew. Any complaint you make to the Senate will require you to admit you initiated hostilities in violation of the Neutral Zone Treaty. You think the treaty matters, Captain? You think politics will protect you. I think you've lost this engagement and are attempting to salvage something from failure. Take your damaged vessels and withdraw, Commander, or we can continue this discussion with Starfleet reinforcements en route. Homelander made his way through corridors filled with damage control teams, medical personnel rushing to treat injured crew. He saw the cost of the battle in their faces: fear, pain, determination. These people had risked everything because their captain ordered it, because they trusted his judgment even when it meant facing impossible odds. They'd done it for him. A stranger, an outsider, a weapon they had every reason to fear. The bridge doors opened. Every eye turned toward him. Homelander saw scorch marks on consoles, emergency lighting casting harsh shadows, but also fierce pride and expressions that had regarded him with suspicion just hours before. All warbirds are withdrawing across the neutral zone, Data reported. The rift remains under our jurisdiction. Casualties? Picard asked. 7 injured, none critical, Worf replied. Sick Bay is treating them now. Structural damage to multiple decks, but nothing that will compromise ship integrity. Picard stood, moved to where Homelander stood in the center of the bridge. The captain's uniform was singed at the shoulder, and there was a cut above his eye that he ignored completely. You kept your word, Picard said simply. Thank you. I punched through your bridge ceiling. Yes, we'll need to repair that. Also several other decks. And replace a considerable amount of hull plating. Picard's expression was serious, but his eyes held warmth. But we're alive because you chose to fight with us rather than for yourself. That matters more than repairs. People got hurt because of me. Because I wasn't fast enough. People got hurt because we were attacked by 6 warboats, Riker corrected, standing from his station. They'd have died without your intervention. You saved the ship, Homelander. You saved us. Counselor Troi approached, and Homelander braced for psychological analysis. Instead, she simply smiled. I'm sensing something different from you now, she said quietly. The fear is still there, the pain is still there. But underneath it, purpose. Real purpose, not performed heroism. You chose to protect people who couldn't protect themselves, not because you needed their worship, but because it was the right thing to do. Don't psychoanalyze me right now, Counselor. I'm not in the mood. Not psychoanalyzing. Observing. There's a difference. Worf stepped forward, and Homelander tensed slightly. The Klingon had made no secret of his distrust. But when Worf spoke, his voice carried something unexpected: respect. You fought with honor today. You followed orders despite your power, making you theoretically autonomous. You protected those weaker than yourself without demanding recognition. That is the definition of a warrior worthy of respect. I'm not a warrior. I don't know what I am. Then perhaps it is time to discover that, Data suggested, joining the circle that had formed around Homelander. Your actions today demonstrated capacity for selflessness and tactical cooperation. Those qualities suggest possibilities you may not have considered about your own nature. Picard's comm badge chirped. Sick bay to Captain. All injuries treated successfully. No critical cases. Dr. Crusher requests you get that cut above your eye examined. Acknowledged. Tell Beverly I'll be there shortly. Picard looked around his bridge, at the damage and the determination, the fear and the triumph. Stand down from red alert. Damage control teams, begin repairs. Senior staff, meet in the conference room in 1 hour. We need to discuss the political ramifications of what just happened. What about me? Homelander asked. Am I included in senior staff meetings now? That depends. Do you want to be? It was a genuine question, not rhetorical. Picard was offering him a choice: integration into the crew structure or continued independence. Homelander stopped, realizing he didn't have a prepared answer. For once, nobody had written the script. I don't know. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. The offer stands whenever you're ready. Picard headed for the turbolift, then paused at the threshold. One more thing, Homelander. When you punched through the bridge ceiling, you could have killed people. The trajectory was such that debris could have struck any number of stations. But you angled your exit to avoid casualties, didn't you? Even in crisis, even acting on instinct, you chose to protect rather than simply escape. Homelander hadn't consciously thought about it, but yes, he'd calculated the safest exit vector in the split second before moving. Habit from years of Vought PR controlling collateral damage for cameras. Except there were no cameras here. No PR team. Just the automatic response of someone who, despite everything, didn't actually want to hurt people. I guess I did, he said quietly. That tells me everything I need to know about who you're becoming. Picard smiled. Welcome to the Enterprise, Homelander. I think you're going to fit in better than you expect. The turbolift doors closed. The bridge crew returned to their duties, addressing damage reports and system diagnostics. And Homelander stood in the center of it all, feeling something he hadn't felt since before Vought, before Compound V, before everything that had made him into what he was. Belonging. Not worship. Not fear. Not strategic alliance. Just simple, honest acceptance from people who'd seen him at his worst and chosen to believe in his best. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely unprecedented. Data approached, his golden eyes reflecting tactical displays. Homelander, I have completed initial analysis of the dimensional rift. Would you like to review the findings? The rift? You mean my potential way home? Precisely. Although I should clarify. Home may be a more complex destination than you anticipate. Show me. They moved to the science station, where Data pulled up quantum analysis models. Homelander studied them, his enhanced cognition processing the mathematical structures. Wait, this shows multiple quantum signatures. Different versions of my universe. Not merely different versions. The rift appears to connect to every possible timeline where you could have existed. Infinite variations on your reality, each slightly different from the others. Finding the specific universe you came from would be. Data paused. Statistically improbable. The quantum variance is too great for precise navigation. So I can never go home. Not to my actual home. That is the most likely conclusion. However, you could potentially visit universes very similar to yours. Investigate alternate versions of your own timeline. Explore what you might have become under different circumstances. Homelander stared at the rift data, processing the implications. He was truly stranded, not because he couldn't access the rift, but because home was lost among infinite variations of itself. Or, Data continued carefully. You could choose to make this universe your home. Build a new life here. Discover who you could become without the constraints of your original reality. Is that what you'd do? If you were me? I am uncertain. But I know that defining yourself by what you've lost prevents you from appreciating what you might gain. Data's head tilted in that characteristic gesture. You saved 1,500 people today, Homelander. Not because you were ordered to, not because cameras were watching, but because you chose to. That choice defines you far more accurately than your origin or your powers ever could. Through the view screen, the dimensional rift rotated slowly, beautiful and impossible, a doorway to everywhere and nowhere. Homelander looked at it and realized something profound. He didn't need to go home. He just needed to figure out who he was without one. 3 weeks after the Romulan engagement, Homelander stood in 10 Forward, the Enterprise's civilian lounge, nursing a glass of milk and watching stars streak past at warp speed. The room was populated but not crowded. Crew members relaxing after shifts, families playing games, civilians engaged in quiet conversations. Nobody stared at him anymore. Not openly, anyway. He'd become a fixture aboard the ship, a strange but accepted presence. Some crew members still gave him wide berth, uncertain how to interact with someone who could tear through bulkheads with his bare hands. Others had grown comfortable enough to nod greetings in corridors, even engage in brief small talk. It was profoundly weird. Mind if I join you? Homelander turned to find Guinan, 10 Forward's enigmatic bartender, standing beside his table with a glass of something amber-colored. She was an El-Orian, Data had explained, a species of listeners whose lifespans measured in centuries. She seemed to know everyone's business without anyone quite remembering telling her. It's a free ship, Homelander said. Guinan settled into the chair across from him with fluid grace. Actually, it's Starfleet property governed by strict hierarchical command structure and regulated by Federation law. But I appreciate the sentiment. Despite himself, Homelander smiled. You do that a lot. Do what? Say things that sound friendly but are actually corrections. Like Picard, but less formal. The captain and I have known each other a long time. We tend to influence each other's communication styles. She sipped her drink, studying him with eyes that seemed to see too much. You've been standing here for 47 minutes. Same spot every night for the past week. Watching the stars. What are you looking for? I don't know. Perspective, maybe? In my universe, I could fly faster than light. Here, the whole ship barely manages it. Makes everything feel bigger, more vast, or it makes you feel smaller. Homelander's jaw tightened. I thought bartenders were supposed to be comforting. I am being comforting. Sometimes comfort means acknowledging difficult truths rather than avoiding them. Guinan's expression softened. You're afraid that without your relative superiority, you don't matter. That if you're not the most powerful being in the room, you're nothing. Counselor Troi already covered this in our sessions. I'm sure she did. But Deanna approaches psychology academically. I'm simply observing. Guinan leaned forward. Let me tell you something about power, Homelander. I've lived over 500 years. I've seen empires rise and fall, watched species evolve and go extinct, observed beings of impossible power reduce themselves to nothing because they confused strength with significance. And what's the difference? Strength is what you can do. Significance is what you choose to do with it. You're strong, impossibly, remarkably strong. But that's just biology. Chemistry. Compound V, rearranging your cellular structure. It's what you were given, not who you are. Easy to say when you're not defined by your power. Isn't that what you want? To not be defined by it. Guinan's eyes held something ancient and kind. You fought alongside this crew 3 weeks ago. Bled with them. Protected them. And not once did anyone thank you because you were powerful. They thanked you because you chose to help. That's significance. Homelander looked down at his milk, seeing his distorted reflection in the white liquid. I don't know how to be significant without being powerful. It's all I've ever been. Then learn. You're young. What, 30 years old at most? You have decades, maybe centuries if your enhanced biology extends your lifespan. Time enough to discover what else you might become. Centuries? The thought had never occurred to him. I could live that long. Dr. Crusher's analysis suggests your cellular regeneration might slow your aging considerably. You might outlive everyone you know. Guinan's smile was sad. Welcome to the curse of longevity. You'll watch people you care about grow old and die while you remain unchanged. It's profoundly lonely. You sound like you're speaking from experience. I've buried more friends than you can imagine. That's the price of living long enough to matter. You lose pieces of yourself with every generation. She sipped her drink. But it's also a gift. You get to see change unfold, to witness transformation on scales most beings can't comprehend. You get to choose, repeatedly, who you'll become as the universe evolves around you. Before Homelander could respond, his comm badge chirped. Picard's voice. Homelander, please report to stellar cartography. We've made a discovery you should see. On my way, Captain. He stood, then paused. Guinan. Thanks. For the perspective. Anytime. That's literally what I'm here for. Stellar cartography was occupied by the senior staff when Homelander arrived. Picard stood before the central holographic display, which showed the dimensional rift in unprecedented detail. Data was manipulating the controls, highlighting specific quantum signatures with focused intensity. Thank you for coming, Picard said. Mr. Data has completed his comprehensive analysis of the rift. We thought you should hear the findings directly. Data pulled up a series of complex models. After 3 weeks of continuous scanning and quantum analysis, I have identified the rift's fundamental structure. It is, as we suspected, a nexus point connecting to multiple parallel universes simultaneously. Current estimates suggest it links to approximately 14,000 discrete realities. 14,000, Riker repeated. That's enormous. Indeed. However, I have also identified patterns within the quantum variants. Specifically, I can now distinguish between different types of connected universes. Data highlighted several clusters. These signatures correspond to universes nearly identical to our own, variations where single decisions led to different outcomes. These represent universes significantly divergent from ours, with different physical laws or historical developments. And these. He isolated a small cluster of signatures. These appear to be variations of Homelander's origin universe. Homelander felt his pulse quicken. You can identify my universe? Not precisely, but I can identify approximately 47 universes that share quantum characteristics consistent with the energy signature you brought with you during the initial transfer. One of them is likely your origin point. Likely? Not definitely. The quantum variance is too subtle for absolute certainty. However, I have developed theoretical navigation protocols that could allow controlled transit through the rift. With proper quantum stabilization and dimensional coordinates, you could potentially visit these similar universes. Could I return here? To this universe? Theoretically, yes. The rift appears stable enough to permit two-way transit, provided you carry a quantum beacon tuned to this reality's specific signature. Data manipulated the display, showing a device design. I have begun construction of such a beacon. It will require another 2 weeks to complete, but once finished, you would be able to navigate between this universe and others with relative safety. Homelander stared at the display, processing the implications. He could leave. Not permanently, but he could explore, could search for his original universe, could see what other versions of himself existed across the multiverse. There's something else, Counselor Troi said quietly. Something Data hasn't mentioned yet. Data inclined his head. Counselor Troi is correct. While analyzing the rift's connections, I detected evidence of deliberate manipulation. Someone, or something, has been actively using the rift for dimensional transit. The quantum residue suggests multiple crossings within the past standard year. Meaning what? Worf demanded. Someone is using this as a doorway? Precisely. And their transit signatures suggest technology far more advanced than Federation standard. Whoever is using this rift possesses dimensional travel capabilities that exceed our current understanding. Picard's expression grew serious. Could it be the Romulans? Secret Tal Shiar research we're unaware of. Negative. The quantum signature is inconsistent with any known Romulan technology. It is also inconsistent with Federation, Klingon, Cardassian, Borg, or Dominion technological profiles. Then who? Riker asked. Unknown. But I believe we should investigate. If there is an intelligence actively using dimensional rifts, the implications for Federation security are significant. Picard turned to Homelander. This is your decision. The rift brought you here, and you have the greatest personal stake in understanding it. If you want to explore it, to search for your home universe, or investigate these mysterious travelers, we'll support that. But it's not without risk. Homelander looked at the rift data, at the countless possibilities represented by those quantum signatures. 47 potential homes. Infinite variations of himself. Unknown beings with impossible technology. And behind him, the Enterprise. The crew. The life he was slowly, painfully building from nothing. If I go, he said slowly, would I be going alone? That depends, Data replied. A small team could theoretically transit with you, provided they remained within your protective energy field during crossing. However, the risk increases substantially with each additional person. I'll go, Worf said immediately. If we're investigating potential security threats, security should be represented. I should accompany you as well, Data added. My android physiology is more resistant to dimensional stress than biological beings. And my analytical capabilities would be valuable for understanding what we discover. Counselor Troi's empathic abilities could be crucial if we encounter other dimensional travelers, Picard suggested. Then he paused. Though I'm hesitant to risk so many senior officers on what is effectively a reconnaissance mission into completely unknown territory. With respect, Captain, Homelander said, I don't think you understand what you're offering. You're talking about trusting me with your crew's lives in a situation where you'd have zero control. Where I'd be the only one keeping them alive in transit. He struggled for words. That's insane. You barely know me. We know you well enough, Picard replied. You've had 3 weeks to demonstrate your character. You've attended Counselor Troi's therapy sessions without complaint. You've participated in crew activities. You've helped engineering teams with repairs using your strength, asked Lieutenant Worf to train you in tactical analysis, and spent hours in 10 Forward talking with civilians who were initially terrified of you. You've been monitoring me. I've been observing you. There's a difference. And what I've observed is someone genuinely trying to understand themselves and find their place in this universe. Someone who saved my ship and crew when he could have simply left. That's the person I'm trusting with this mission. The words settled over Homelander like a weight and a gift simultaneously. Trust. Real. Earned. Significant trust. Okay, he said. But we do this carefully. Data's quantum beacon first, so we can definitely return. Full planning, risk assessment, backup protocols. I'm not getting your people killed because we rushed into something stupid." Riker smiled. "You're starting to sound like a Starfleet officer." "Don't push it, Commander." Over the next 2 weeks, preparations consumed Homelander's attention. He worked with Data on understanding the quantum beacon's operation, studied dimensional physics with every spare moment, and trained with Worf on tactical protocols for unknown situations. He also continued his therapy sessions with Counselor Troi. "You're afraid," she observed during one session, 3 days before the planned transit. "Not of the rift itself, but of what you might find on the other side. Wouldn't you be? I might encounter versions of myself who are worse than I am. Monsters who never tried to be better. Or versions who are better, who figured out how to be good without needing a dimensional displacement to force them to confront themselves. And either possibility terrifies you. Yes, if I find worse versions, it confirms my fear that I'm one bad day away from becoming them. If I find better versions, it means I've wasted my potential, that I could have been good all along, but chose not to be." Or, Troi suggested gently, "you might find versions who are simply different. Neither better nor worse, just alternative paths taken from similar starting points. And maybe that would help you understand that who you are isn't predetermined by your creation or your power. It's determined by your choices." The night before the mission, Homelander couldn't sleep. He wandered the ship's corridors, eventually finding himself in Holodeck 2, the same holodeck where he'd first confronted his displacement. "Computer, show me the dimensional rift." Real-time feed, external view. The holodeck transformed into the view from the Enterprise's hull. The rift rotated slowly against the starfield, beautiful and terrible and full of infinite possibility. Tomorrow, he would enter it. Would fly through reality itself, carrying 3 Starfleet officers who trusted him with their lives. Would explore universes that might show him who he could have been, who he might still become. Impressive sight, isn't it? Homelander turned to find Captain Picard standing in the holodeck entrance, wearing casual civilian clothes and holding a book, actual paper, bound in leather. "Couldn't sleep either?" Homelander asked. "The night before a significant mission rarely allows for rest." "I find reading helps." Picard moved to stand beside him, gazing at the rift. "Shakespeare, Hamlet, specifically. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Seems appropriate given what we're about to attempt. You're not coming with us tomorrow." "No. Someone needs to command the Enterprise, and I trust my away team to handle the mission competently. Even when that team is led by someone who 3 weeks ago you considered a potential threat? Especially then. Trust means something precisely because it's given despite risk, not in its absence." Picard closed his book. "Homelander, whatever you find on the other side of that rift, remember something. You are not defined by alternate versions of yourself. You're defined by the choices you make in this moment, in this universe, with the knowledge and capabilities you currently possess." That's what Troi keeps saying. Because it's true, and because you need to hear it until you believe it. Picard's expression grew serious. "I've lived long enough to know that people are not fixed entities. We're constantly becoming, constantly choosing who will be next. The person you were when you arrived on this ship is not the person standing here now. And the person you'll be when you return from this mission will be different still. What if I don't like who I'm becoming? Then you choose to become someone else. That's the beauty and terror of consciousness. We're always one choice away from transformation, for better or worse." They stood together in silence, watching the rift rotate. Tomorrow would bring answers, or more questions, or dangers they couldn't anticipate. But tonight, Homelander felt something unprecedented. Ready, not because he was powerful or special or destined for greatness, but because he'd chosen to try being better, and people had chosen to believe he could succeed. That was enough. "Thank you, Captain," Homelander said quietly, "for taking a chance on me when you had every reason not to." "Thank you for proving me right," Picard replied. "Now get some rest. Tomorrow, you're going to show us what's possible when someone refuses to be limited by their past." Homelander left the holodeck and returned to his quarters. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he fell asleep quickly, dreamlessly, without fear. Tomorrow, he would fly into the unknown. But he would fly as part of a team, trusted and trusting, no longer alone. And that made all the difference. The dimensional rift had brought Homelander to the Enterprise as a weapon without purpose, a god without worshippers, a man who had never learned to be human. 3 weeks in the Federation had not healed his wounds or erased his trauma. That would take years, perhaps decades of continued growth. But it had given him something more valuable than healing: possibility. He had learned that power without purpose was just noise. That worship without connection was empty performance. That being the strongest person in the room mattered less than choosing to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The crew of the Enterprise had offered him what Vought never could: genuine acceptance earned through choice rather than demanded through marketing. They saw his capabilities and his damage, his potential and his limitations, and decided he was worth the risk of trust. In return, Homelander had discovered something profound. He didn't need to be worshipped to matter. He just needed to matter to people who mattered to him. As the Enterprise maintained position near the dimensional rift, preparing for tomorrow's expedition into the multiverse, Homelander stood in his quarters looking at himself in the mirror. Same face, same costume, same powers, but different eyes. Eyes that had seen what it meant to choose service over supremacy, collaboration over dominance, growth over stagnation. The multiverse awaited. Infinite versions of himself, infinite possibilities, infinite chances to understand who he could become when freed from the constraints of a single reality. But whatever he found out there, he knew one thing with certainty. He had a home to return to. Not the laboratory that created him, not the corporate empire that exploited him, but a starship full of people who believed he could be better than his worst impulses. And that belief, more than any amount of Compound V, made him truly powerful. The journey was just beginning, and for the first time in his existence, Homelander was ready to discover where it might lead. Live long and prosper. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories.